Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Law-Splaining the Interwebs. I'm your host, Nick Recato of Recato Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. And with me today is returning guest, Attorney Joe from Good Logic. How's it going, man?
Joe Neerman, how you doing?
Yeah, welcome, welcome.
It's been too
Uh,
long. I think
uh,
the last time I was here, it was right before the storming of the Capitol. Like we were talking about how that was going to play down. Like it was
yeah,
like a couple days before. We were talking about how January 6th was going to play out. So we
right.
had a great
And
time last time.
we did. And I don't think either of us saw the actual storming of the Capitol building in our wild prognostication.
That was of
we
all the things I predicted. I made one prediction that night. I said it was not going to be decided when we went to bed. And when they stormed the Capitol and they sort of held on to it for like, I don't know, 20 minutes, a half hour, I was like, there you go. My prediction's coming true. And then like at 2 in the morning, I think it got called. So my prediction was
It was
sort
close.
of,
It was close.
yeah,
You know, if they had not stormed the Capitol, though, I do think there would have been more states going through the challenge process, and it would have lasted a little longer. But that it really took the wind out of the challenge's sails. Republicans largely backed off. I mean, they did 2 state challenges when I was expecting them to do at least 4.
yeah, yeah.
And
That definitely. It's almost like the Republicans in Congress, the ones who are not rhinos, they were sort of put in a position as like, if I stand up here and argue, then I look like I supported what happened today. And everyone's going to think that I'm okay with what happened. And that just makes me look like I'm practically QAnon. So they were sort of hedged in their position as to what they could do without looking like they were what is legitimately called the far right lunatics, as opposed to, central Republicans who are called far right by the left, if that makes
right,
sense.
yeah, I mean, and we've seen the fallout from it too, right? We see what's gone on. Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley continued to um, hold the line until Pennsylvania came up, and
Yeah.
they levied their objections there. And for that, I mean, they have been crucified, crucified by the media, by some of their colleagues. They've basically sacrificed a bunch of PAC money,
Yeah.
allegedly, and so we saw just how much that has carried an impact that and why we can see why many Republican politicians backed off actually from that.
Yeah.
They knew the
Well,
political fallout. Ted and Josh just probably are confident enough in their positions that they're willing to take the hit.
yeah, and everyone knows the Democrats never let a good crisis go to waste. So, and that
Right.
this was a perfect storm of a crisis for them to actually leverage, look like they're the good guys, that Republicans are the bad guys, and that they're crazy, and that they were going to milk it for everything, and that anyone whose name was attached to that was going to basically be branded as if they were literally carrying a flag or a bayonet and like marching to the Capitol and leading the storm themselves. So they really were put into a hamstrung position. On January 6th itself, I was really upset that they didn't stand up harder, that the first objections came after Biden already had 270. And I'm like, okay, this is really now you're just trying to appeal to your base and say, oh, look, we're raising objections. And they had already let, Georgia swing by and Michigan swing by, and then they raise it on Pennsylvania. I'm like, okay, you're just trying to preach to your choir and make it sound like you really care, even though you don't, because now it's too late. They're already at 270. But with
Right.
the benefit of hindsight of a few weeks, I think it's fair to say that with all the political heat they would have gotten, it really was asking a lot of them to try and stand up there after that incident. So
Yeah, and the hard reality of that is in an ideal world they should be able to, right? They
mhm.
should be able to still do that, but with the practical reality of politics, the money that drives it, which is just frankly it's just a part of it, so you got to deal with that. Having that sort of fallout just for many Republicans was not going to work out, and I wish it would have. I would have loved to see more of a challenge. I would have loved to see that promise of presenting evidence fulfilled, but unfortunately, we don't get it. So, but that being said, we are now moving on. We are moving on. However, the Democrat Party is not, and they are stuck in this land of Trump must be must be punished to the point of removal or death, whichever comes first. And I say that in full knowledge that he is no longer in office. So removal has technically been fulfilled, which is a big part of the case we're going to go through. But also, they still need to meet that removal requirement for the
Do
impeachment.
you think, I'm going to ask you, and this is a thought that just as you were speaking crossed my mind. Do you think this impeachment from a Democrat perspective, from the elites, because I'm sure that there's a myriad of agendas that they have here, but the ones who are the ones who are really calling the shots, do you think the impeachment is about embarrassing Trump, or that they don't want to see him be able to run again in 4 years? Or is it a message to like anyone who's going to follow MAGA footsteps that we will go to the wall to crush you? Those are three different agendas. And I'm wondering which one you think is the real strongest driving force behind the powers that be.
I think number two is the least important. I
They
don't
don't care about
think
Trump running.
I I don't think maybe I'll be proven wrong by history, but I think the likelihood of Trump running again was already crushed on January 6th. I
Okay.
just think I think that the taint of that moment, and I'm not actually faulting Trump for it. I really don't think that he caused this riot or insurrection or whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't think
Right.
he's responsible for that in any direct way. I mean, you can make a whole bunch of arguments about how his dangerous conspiracy rhetoric leading up to it led to this, but it's like, okay, but that's not what causes a riot. Like, that's a different thing. That's
Right.
expressing political speech, and some people disagree with it, and that's fine. Um,
Mhm.
but I do think that once it happened, similar to the tone shift we saw in Republicans generally, I think that was basically the death knell of Trump's 2024 run. And I don't think he'll do it. I mean, he might. I can be wrong about this, but I just think that if he does run, it's so politically toxic now, and I don't expect that to change in 4 years, that I think people will just stay away from it, including I think delegates will, or in the primaries, even if he were to run, I don't think that he'll get votes for it because of just the stigma attached to it. And I think that stigma is unfair. I want to be clear on that, but I think that is the reality of it. So I don't think Democrats are overly concerned with a Trump run. And as final evidence of this, if I, who actually support Donald Trump and don't think he's responsible for the Capitol, if I'm thinking that way, right or wrong, I guarantee you Democrats are thinking that way, right or wrong.
That's true.
There's my
That's true.
evidence.
So wait, so you think it's about embarrassing him? They just want to like they hate him so much they just want to hurt him.
I think his entire presidency, they have been looking for revenge for him having the audacity to beat Hillary Clinton. And they've made him now the most impeached president in U.S. history. And I think that was really, really an important message for them to get out. I think that failing the first impeachment, they had to impeach him a second time. They've been waiting for an opportunity to somehow make him so much the worst,
Hmm.
especially worse than Bill Clinton. Remember, they
Right.
gotta do that. And what better way than to impeach him twice? If the only better thing that could have happened would be if Trump could have won, so they could have impeached him 5 more times.
That definitely would have happened. But if it's only about beating Clinton, they've already beaten Clinton, so they wouldn't need to push so hard on this trial. They could have said, well, he's out of office, so we're going to let it go. They're still pushing hard on this trial. I mean, this is like a big deal to them that they're hoping
Yeah.
they can somehow sway some Republicans into joining their side.
I don't
So,
I don't know if they're as worried about the conviction or not. Maybe they are. Maybe they really, really think that they're gonna nail him on the conviction, but all signs seem to be pointing to he's gonna be acquitted right now.
mhm,
That seems like the likely outcome. I think it's about just dragging him as much as possible, as long as possible. Also, keeping his name in the media, because as long as Trump's name is in the media, they have an easy access point to have their names in the media. So
right.
I think that's a combination. I do think that third one is also a big one, which is the retribution in general towards the right. we will go to the wall, we will punish you, we will seek you down. And we've seen that with not only the arrest and prosecution of the Capitol rioters in general, but we've also seen that with how they're going after Marjorie Taylor Greene, how they're going after
Right.
Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, how they're going after everybody who is an outspoken supporter of Trump. Hell, how they're going after Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood, Mike Lindell. I mean, there is a coordinated effort on the legal level, on the social level, and on the media level to go after anybody who is an outspoken and vocal supporter. And so I
Yeah,
think,
I think you really nailed it. I think it's
yeah.
really about we want to crush MAGA. This is
Hmm.
we have big tech crushing MAGA. We'll cut off your subs. We'll cut off your followers. We're gonna silence you. We're gonna remove you from the platforms, deplatform anyone who's got a significant voice for things, the crimes that they don't even know they committed. We're gonna try and knock down and associate and taint anyone with anything negative that happened at the Capitol. All of we're all of this is a coordinated effort to basically, I think, crush MAGA because I think I think they feared MAGA. I think they
Yes.
saw what he did, and then he started awakening. If you're in the Democrat, you have to be afraid when you see that like 20% of African American community voted red this time for President Trump, who they spent 4 years vilifying racist, 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 and still 1 in 5 African Americans, way more than any Republicans saw in what 50 years,
Yeah.
that way more are coming out for them, and that's a very scary lean that would only continue happening. And I think that they were really afraid of that, and that's why they're out to crush MAGA. So I think that that's what this is all about. This is not an attack on Trump as much as it is about just trying to really just bring the sledgehammer down on MAGA.
Yeah. And I
That's how I
think,
look at it.
well, and one of the big things is, and it's codified, I guess, in or solidified or whatever in what you were saying about the black vote in general, is that Trump did something that was really terrifying. He used populism effectively, and that has been the
Mhm.
sole purview of Democrats for my entire life, is using, well, except for Reagan. After Reagan, I guess.
Right.
After Reagan, the Democrats have been the populists. They have been, the party of the people, the party of the working class. They framed themselves that way really through socialism, and then they found out that if you do populism differently, it still works. You don't have to be socialist to be pro-American and pro average guy, right?
Right.
You can do it by just saying, "Hey, you know what? I respect that you get out there and you work with your hands, or you're out there
Yeah.
struggling to make ends meet." We've all been there, and the ability of a billionaire, frankly, like to identify with this wave of middle class people, I think was horrifying to them.
Yeah.
They went, wait, no, we're supposed to be the billionaires controlling the middle class people. And here you've got middle class people who can sit down and have some KFC and a beer with this middle class or with
Yeah.
this middle class billionaire, right?
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
that terrified them. And so I think that is another aspect of why they're so scared of MAGA. And we've seen what they've been trying to do with the post election thing, and it's kind of backfiring because they're incompetent, but they immediately tried to buy them back with $2,000 checks, right? That was a
Mhm.
big thing, and it worked through the Georgia election, the promise of $2,000 checks. Of course, now it's 1,400, and those $1,400 checks are going to be relegated to like $50,000 or less earners. And so you've got a lot of people in states with higher costs of living going, wait a minute, like 50 grand is what you make at Starbucks here. Um,
Yeah.
sorry.
That's true.
I make, I mean, heck, you're in the Northeast. And out there, I have a feeling that it's very different making 50 grand where you are and 50
You
grand where
can't
I
you
am.
can't you can't live. You
No.
cannot live on 50 grand here. Not if you have a couple of kids. It's impossible. It is.
Hmm.
And from yeah, that's why the median here is way higher. I mean,
Right.
and that's why this whole $15 an hour that's become so popular. Biden's trying to talk now. It's so ridiculous because $15 an hour in New York. is not at all the same thing as $15 an hour in Louisiana or
No.
Iowa or any of these other places. And that's why a national standard makes absolutely no sense. I mean, I think that in general, my whole perspective about economics is very different from socialism and everything like that. And I think that in general, that when you put in a minimum wage, it's a terrible thing. I think that we saw inflation and deflation, all the problems started to happen in the late 60s after we first came up with minimum wage in the first place. But
Right.
putting that aside, if you're going to go down that road, if that's what you think, okay, this is what is fair, appropriate, at least do it logically. And logic says that you have to look at the standard cost of living in the area and then use that as a basis to come up with what your minimum wage standard is. And that, yeah, it's going to be much higher in New York, New Jersey, or California than it's going to be in Montana.
What they should
So,
do, like if they want a minimum wage, they should just tie it to, one of the poverty line indicators, like 80% median income or something like that. Just go
mhm,
ahead and say, okay, we're going to come up with the minimum living standard. We'll say it's 70% or 65% of median income, and then we'll just
mhm,
say minimum wage has to be this based on a 2,000-hour work year. Done.
perfect.
Simple. Like,
Yeah,
if you're gonna
yeah.
do it, that makes sense. Um,
We just solved the crisis in like 15 seconds, and they can't figure it out in years, decades.
but of course they can't, and they also can't even seem to pass this 25 or this $15 minimum wage. By the time they pass it and implement it, there'll be calls for 20 and $25 minimum wage, and there's
And how
no.
incompetent are they that they can have the House, the Senate, presidency, and he's still everything has to be an EO. Like you
Yep.
have everything. Like and you still need to I think he's on pace like to shatter the record for the first month of a president signing EOs when he has all the leverage in the world. Just sit everyone down in a room, say this is what we're gonna do, and actually pass it in a way that's like has some legitimacy to it instead of making him look like King Biden.
Yeah,
But
he's at 28 EOs in his first 2 weeks in office, and the record for the first month is FDR, which is
like during war.
totalitarian in chief with 30.
Right.
So
Oh no, that was actually this is when you're in incoming, so it wasn't during war. That was like 1932, I
no, it
guess,
was
when he
just
came in.
during the fallout after the
During
Great
depression.
Depression.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
worst depression in the world, and he's trying to change everything. So okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
So and again, I think most of what Roosevelt did was atrocious
oh yeah,
economically and cemented these progressive and borderline socialist policies for ever. I mean, they've been around forever, and he did it through executive order and through intimidation from the bully pulpit. But at least he had a reason. Joe's
yeah. Well,
coming in. Oh wait, I shouldn't call him Joe because you're Joe. I'll call him Biden. Biden's coming in. Biden's coming in, and the crisis is we're a year into a pandemic, and the wheels of quote unquote solution for the pandemic are already long in motion. Like his
well,
crisis
so
is Trump.
first things first. When they unanimously name me king of the universe, you're going to refer to me as Joe at that point. So I'm
Yes.
okay with. I'll reform the name at that point. You
Okay.
can deal. I can deal with the hit until then. But here's the interesting thing. You talk about FDR's financial policies, and this is how sad the Democrats are. To this day, they do not realize how disastrous they were. They have the benefit not just of Monday morning quarterback, but it's for like what 70 years, 80 years of history to look back, and they still can't figure out how that slowed our growth out of the recession. And they're so bad at understanding it and this party, which the one thing they specialize in is how they label their stuff. They're really great at giving these beautiful labels.
Yeah.
The New Deal was like the worst financial concept in the world. And what did they come up with now? The Green New Deal. Really? That's the best you can come up with? The Green New Deal? I mean, the New Deal was like, oh, that was just such a bonanza. We gotta like double down on that and go with Green New Deal.
Yeah. Well, she wasn't a creative writing major. Let's just okay.
But these guys are. Did you start reading this brief? These guys are amazing.
I
Yeah.
did. I did start reading it. I've got it pulled up on screen here, and we're gonna jump into it in just a second. I want to say this. Do you know what time the actual proceedings start tomorrow?
So I saw something like saying that it was around noon,
Yeah,
and
because I saw they started 11 on Wednesday. I was able to find, but I couldn't find tomorrow's time. But they're
yeah,
opening with four
apparently
hours
they're
of
out all night
debate.
partying. They're so excited that Trump's gone that they get drunk and pass out at 3 in the morning, and then like roll into work at 11 o'clock or something like that. I
Yeah.
don't understand why they can't start at 9,
No, I'm
10.
stop it. I want them to start at 11 because that's better
I
for
forgot who
me.
I'm talking to. That's right. I'm
So,
curious, over here, we start everything in court and everything. Like, if you set a deposition before 10 a.m., like you're considered like the biggest jerk in the world. And
yeah.
I'm wondering, by you guys, do they also start, is 10 a.m. like a normal lawyer litigator time to start your day, or people there like 9, like the cows got up at 5, why you're
Yeah.
not in court by 9?
Seriously, yes. Everything starts at 8:30 to 9 o'clock, and it's brutal. I hate it. That's why I don't like practicing so much because it's like, oh man, I just stay up. If I have a court appearance, I actually just stay up from the show and go
Wow.
to sleep after because if I'm gonna go to bed at like 5, then I'm gonna wake up at 8
You'll
or
never make
well
it a day.
7. It'd
Yeah,
be a mess.
you
But
never make it.
okay, so I wanted to say I believe if possible, I will be doing live stream coverage of the impeachment. So if you want to see the C-SPAN boring take with some lawyerly commentary coming in, you're welcome to join. The live streams will be up all throughout the week as long as it's interesting. If it gets really boring, we'll stop. But you guys are welcome to show up for that. So that's going to be happening starting tomorrow. So
Mhm.
should be a good time. And tomorrow is
Did
four hours of debate on the constitutionality of it. So that should be.
you weren't big enough to be streaming back by the first impeachment, right?
No, I was. When was it? Was that what?
That was like end of December, early January 2020.
Oh yeah. Wait, no, not
He's
2020.
Yeah, a year
December
ago.
2020.
Believe he was impeached in January 2020.
That's it. Oh yeah,
Meaning
I was
December 2019.
okay.
December 2019 is
January
when there was
2020.
impeachment.
Okay,
Right.
yeah, yeah. I was at like 75,000 subscribers then.
But you didn't do it back then.
I didn't live stream the impeachment, no. You see,
Right.
I was trying to avoid talking about politics because it makes me angry.
Uh,
I didn't want to delve into it. But
yeah. Well,
I
the
think I
lawyer he had for that, the lawyer he had for that defense was a really good lawyer. He impressed me. And the lawyers we've seen since the election, it's like I look at them and I always thought that I was naive enough to think that if you're a lawyer for the president of the United States, you're a lawyer on a massive stage with all these election lawsuits and stuff like that, that would be the creme de la creme. These would be just like the most amazing lawyers. Like they would be the ideal lawyer that I would look up to, or a teenager who's thinking about becoming a lawyer would look at them and say, "Wow, that's like the Dom Draper of lawyers." That's
right.
what you would think. And then we saw Sidney Powell, and I'm like, I don't I, like. I mean, she did great with Flynn. I mean, great work with Flynn. But I mean, the work that they'd done. That was the last great lawyer I think that we saw for Trump was at his impeachment defense in impeachment 1.0. I guess that's the beta version of impeachment, right? This is the new and
Yeah.
improved.
This is the full release. Yeah, the specific Trump team did not put up a good show. Some of the ancillary Trump team didn't put up a good show. There were a couple good lawsuits though that were drafted. I mean, I think Ken Paxton's draft of Texas v. Pennsylvania was really a well done
Yeah,
document.
yes. Paxton's work was very good. The Amistad Project, their work was pretty good also.
I will also say whoever drafted Kelly versus Pennsylvania, which is the ongoing, and I still think it's one of the best claims that exists, which is the where they changed the voting procedures unconstitutionally in Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
Whoever drafted that lawsuit really did a great job drafting it, framing the issues. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court
That's
just
the Brookvar case, right?
um No, I think this is Kelly versus the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay. All right.
Uh, and that so that was not the Trump team. That was Mike Kelly, who's a Republican representative in Pennsylvania,
Right.
and
Right.
also several other candidates who didn't win, and some delegates, or not delegates, some electors, I believe. And that case is still pending before the Supreme Court. They're going to have a conference on, I think, the 19th to determine which of these election cases, if any, they're going to take.
Hmm.
Right before we jump into the document, what's your prediction? Do you think they're going to take up any of these appeals? We've got Kelly versus Pennsylvania. We've got Linwood's Georgia case, I believe. We've got Sidney Powell's Michigan case. The Linwood, Georgia case, the issue on appeal is actually an interesting issue. It's whether or not you have standing as a voter, right? Because that's the sole issue he preserved for appeal, is whether or not he had standing to bring the case as an individual voter. Now, whatever about the rest of the case, that's a frustrating concept because they literally said, well, even if they shipped in a bunch of votes, everybody was impacted equally, so you don't have standing. And it's like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. When if you're accepting as true the premise that a bunch of votes came in by like barge
Right.
in the middle of the night,
But everyone was affected equally. Everyone. It's
right?
almost
It's a silly proposition. So, but I don't think they're going to take any of the cases personally. Oh, and they've
no.
also got Trump's Pennsylvania case. That's Trump versus Bookvar, I think.
Right.
Um,
Okay. So once they rejected Paxton's Texas versus Pennsylvania case, the Supreme Court was basically saying we won't touch any of this with a 10-foot pole. That's how I read it. I mean, they didn't even they couldn't if they could have been bothered to explain in more than a 2-line clerk note why
right.
they were rejecting it, I would say, okay, maybe they're at least really giving this a serious pass. But if they can't bother to do anything more than literally write 3 lines for their clerk's note for people to read, they can't even write a 2-page decision on Texas versus Pennsylvania, as you said, and I concur. Well drafted papers, great arguments by Paxton, even though I made a clip like 2 months ago where I was like, should have framed it slightly different, but I still overall, Ken Paxton, when I agree with you, when I read his papers, I thought they were better than Josh Shapiro's papers in opposition. I thought he really did a good job, and they didn't want to touch it. If they don't want to touch that, I think that this is too political for one reason or another. They just don't want to have anything to do with addressing this election. I don't think they want to weigh in.
Yeah,
So
I think it's likely they don't pick up any. I hope they pick up at least one, but I don't think they're going to pick up any. And I think they should. That's the important thing. I really think they need to pick up Kelly
I'll
versus
bet you a beer
Pennsylvania.
on it. I'll bet you a beer on it. It's not going to happen.
No, I said it's not a good bet because I agree with you that it's not going to happen. That's a terrible bet.
Oh, okay.
I'd
We'll come up with
I'd
something
be like, I think the odds are stacked heavily in your favor on that one. Okay, there are 2 chats to get to, and then we will start this document. Okay, guys?
Do it.
Fake Mad Bomber says, Kamala used to strip under the name of cinnamon buns. Does that legally disqualify her from assuming presidency when Biden drops dead in 2022? Nope. Cinnamon buns can take office still. That is okay.
Wow.
And how dare you shame sex workers? Idea Machine says we need to have a 100% politically driven circus trial that crucifies the last administration. Then the healing and unity can start, y'all.
Nice.
Idea Machine, I will disagree mildly and say they believe that the healing and unity starts by them showing you how bad Trump is and you finally admitting it.
Right.
So they've already started the healing and unity, you bigot.
Drop to your knees. Drop to your knees and put your hands up towards us in solemn prayer and tell us and say the word unity.
Exactly.
Pray for clemency, and then we'll have unity.
Okay, let's get into this brief of Castor and Schoen and
All right.
Vanderveen. They're all Esquires. Very proud of them for being
Nice.
Esquires. And so I've got it pulled up on screen here. You've got it on your phone there. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Is it correct that you have the document pulled up on your phone?
It is.
Isn't it
Yes,
true that
Counselor.
you're scrolling along with me?
Yes, Counselor.
Okay, I'm skipping the table of contents and we're just going to go directly into it.
Introduction.
Yeah. So introduction, and how I normally do this is I read through the whole thing. If that gets horrifically boring, let me know because we can actually just talk about the sections as they come too. But
Is it okay if I mute and like eat while you're reading that? And like, does that work?
yeah,
And then like when you're ready for me, I'll just sort of like hit the off mute because I don't want to like mess up the
yeah,
sound. People are gonna hear me like munching in
yeah,
your
that
ear. Is that
works. That works.
yeah?
Yeah,
All right.
let's
So I
start
just
with
want
that.
to. All right. Let me just tell me. I'm about to say if I'm muted.
Yeah, you're muted. You're good. You're good. Okay. Introduction. Here we go. So this is the intro part of the document, and the most important thing to remember about this legal brief is that this is not a legal brief. I mean, it is. It's a legal argument that's being made in a legal cause of action. However, this is not a court of law. There is no judge. And one of the thrusts of their argument, or two of the thrusts of their arguments, are basically a motion to dismiss. They're trying to dismiss this action as improper or unconstitutional. And in a court of law, you would be making that claim to a judge who would make a legal determination. In a court of the Senate, you're making that claim to a bunch of congressmen who are also acting as the jury, well, senators specifically, who are also acting as the jury and will be the voters. And they are not bound by any actual law like a judge would be. And there is no review. There's no appellate court or Supreme Court that can come in and say, nope, you got this legal issue wrong. So the writing in this paper is going to be more persuasive and less legally focused typically than you would otherwise find. Although they do ground a lot of their arguments in law. So that being said, let's go. So during the past 4 years, Democrat members of the United States House of Representatives have filed at least 9 resolutions to impeach Donald J. Trump, the 45th president of the United States, each containing charges more outlandish than the next. One might have been excused for thinking that the Democrats' fevered hatred for citizen Trump and their Trump derangement syndrome would have broken by now, seeing as he is no longer the president. And yet, for the second time in just over a year, the United States Senate is preparing to sit as a court of impeachment, but this time over a private citizen who is a former president. In this country, the Constitution, not a political party, not a politician, or not a political party and not politicians, reign supreme. But through this latest articles of impeachment now before the Senate, Democrat politicians seek to carve out a mechanism by which they can silence a political opponent and a minority party. The Senate must summarily reject this brazen political act. This rushed single article of impeachment ignores the very Constitution from which its power comes and is itself defectively drafted. In bringing this impeachment at all, the members of the House leadership have debased the grave power of impeachment and disdained the solemn responsibility that this awesome power entails in bringing this impeachment in the manner in which they did, namely via a process that violated every precedent and every principle of fairness. Followed in impeachment inquiries for more than 150 years, they offered the public a master's class in the art of political opportunism. The intellectual dishonesty and factual vacuity put forth by the House managers in their trial memorandum only served to further punctuate the point that this impeachment proceeding was never about seeking justice. Instead, this is only ever a selfish attempt by Democrat leadership in the House to prey upon the feelings of horror and confusion that fell upon all Americans across the entire political spectrum upon seeing the destruction at the Capitol on January 6th by a few hundred people, instead of acting to heal the nation, or at the very least focusing on prosecuting the lawbreakers who stormed the Capitol. The Speaker of the House and her allies have tried to callously harness the chaos of the moment for their own political gain.
Masterful.
Thank you.
Okay? Your reading matched the mastery of this introduction. I read this and I was like, wow, there is so much here, so neatly compacted, and people don't appreciate that the role of a lawyer is to take the complex and make it simple. And this is a very difficult thing. It's an art that's very difficult. They nailed this so well in this introduction, just from the subtle way they refer to him as Citizen Trump, just to send that message that he's not a sitting president anymore. This whole impeachment is a sham because you shouldn't be impeaching Citizen Trump. That sounds like a joke. Just starting it off with that. So even the language where they're using, they're breaking out the nice SAT words with, vacuity and, excuse me, everything about this. Everything is just, I read this and I was like, That's that's what I expected. That's what I expected from like a Trump lawyer for an impeachment. This is the type of writing which I anticipate. This is
Right.
everything here is just brilliant.
And let's focus
I
real
mean,
quick on what you brought up, Citizen Trump.
mhm.
They dropped that in there very well. It rings of Trump's own branding, right? Like, because it's always one descriptive word and then the person, like Sleepy Joe or whatever. Um, and so he's
I
got,
didn't think of that. That's a great pick up by you. That's
and
true.
it's
That's exactly what he does.
and it's really effective. So Citizen Trump, but then they back it up with italicizing he is no longer the president, and then
Mhm.
in the same sentence as that they say this time over a private citizen who is a former president. I mean, three references to the fact that Trump is not a president in the
Bam.
same sentence.
Yep.
They're hammering that point home, and it's footnoted. So the idea is to get whoever's reading it to stop right after digesting that he's not the president 3 times in a
And,
row and then go down and look at that footnote.
and then it basically comes into this whole point about how this has just been their agenda since day one. This is all it's been about from the day he got elected. That 9 times, which I didn't know was 9 times. Did you know it was 9 times?
No,
Nine times they brought articles of impeachment trying to get this guy impeached. It just shows how it really is. There's no other phrase for it but Trump derangement syndrome. That you're so desperate that 9 times you're trying to impeach this guy, and we had this other impeachment proceeding before, and now this is just the latest shenanigan. Even when he's a citizen, you can almost picture like when you're hearing this, you can almost picture like 3 years from now, someone's going to find something he wrote in his diary back in 2018. They're going to be like, impeach him for this. This
get
is
him out.
crazy.
Get
I
him
mean, it's just
out.
like, yeah. I mean, the guy will be in the grave. They'll literally be at his funeral procession, and someone's going to wave new articles of impeachment against him.
Bury
That's the
these
way.
with that son of a. Octorian says the more the left screams about unity while acting the way they are, the more I'm reminded about the immediate after years of the Treaty of Versailles and a ramp up to the situations that created Hitler. Yeah, well, hopefully that curbs. That's all I'm saying. I hope that curbs. But uh yeah. So and this is important. They frame the issue. They frame the whole they've got three major things. He didn't do it. Like he didn't incite things. It's unconstitutional. And these people are hypocrites. That's basically the thrust of the argument
And
of the
freedom of
whole
speech
thing.
also.
Yeah, and freedom of speech. That little thing. So but they condense it all, like you said, they condense it into this very tangible thing that all politicians can identify with, by the way, and that's political
Mhm.
opportunism. And that's a good
Yeah,
thing. They're remembering that their jury is a specific audience, and
yeah.
it is an audience of people, and all they have to do, and they know it, is convince what 35,
34.
34
Yeah,
Republicans to not vote for this. That's their job, is to get 34 of them and to give them
yeah,
enough ammunition to say, we're not voting for this. And
yeah.
so that's another important thing to remember is what is your win condition when you're writing these
And then
documents.
And because of what Paul Rand did, with we held that vote, and 45 of them were basically saying, "Let's go no further on this." They know they just have to hold serve, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's very, very smart that in this opening paragraph they recognize the storming of the Capitol, terrible tragedy. No one wanted it; it was awful, and they give that up. It's not like they're trying to sit there and say this is not a big deal. What happened? They're not trying to argue. They don't want to allow the ground to give headway to the impeachment management team by basically saying like don't they recognize how terrible this was? No, they're starting off and saying, yeah, this was really, really terrible, but that doesn't mean that this whole impeachment that's following up is anything other than just political game, that the Democrats are just trying to power this home the same way they've been doing for the last 4 years, 8 other times.
And
So
the next section, as a spoiler and preview, they're going to throw everyone who has participated in the storming of the Capitol building right under the bus. There is no mincing of words. They unequivocally call this a criminal act and say that those people should be prosecuted. And again, whatever you may think about that, their job is to keep Donald Trump from being impeached. and they
Right.
have to keep the focus of this discussion off of that, because the Democrats want to make Donald Trump and his presidency be about a bunch of people storming the Capitol and 5 people dying. And that
Mm.
is what they want to make this impeachment about. If they can do that, if they can sensationalize it to be about violence and the deaths of some Americans, that is how they see their only path to winning this fight. Because they're not going to win on Trump's speech alone, and they're not going to win over the unconstitutionality of the process unless they can pull at some sort of heartstring as a sort of Hail Mary and bring the violence into it. What they want is they want Trump to defend the violence at the Capitol. They want
Right.
Trump to stand with these people, and if he does, then they can further attach him to it. They're not going to do that at all.
So I'm going
So
to ask you,
yeah,
confession.
okay,
In your heart of hearts,
uh-huh,
we know what Trump said. Do you think that when it first happened, that they first breached, what do you think his first reaction was internally? I know he had to come out and say, go home. Do
sure.
you think that his first gut reaction was, I'm going to go out there and tell people to go home because I don't want this to happen? Or do you think that his team around him said, you have to tell them to go home? And that was the first words that anyone heard from him publicly. What do you think his heart said?
I think I think okay, so the problem with answering this is that the media has reported that he was delighted.
Hmm.
Which I don't believe the media, generally speaking. Um
Yeah, you have to be an idiot if you're going to believe the media these days, right?
I think that Trump may have had a smug sense of satisfaction and vindication. Like, well, of course they breached the Capitol. This whole thing was ridiculous. I
Right.
think maybe that's it. I don't know that he would be particularly happy about it from the moment he started thinking about what was going to happen afterwards.
Right.
Um, Also, Trump is not he has not been in favor of protests and violence at all during his presidency. Now,
That's true.
typically that is coming from the left, but he hasn't been favorable towards it. I believe he condemned even, I mean, it was a mild condemnation, but the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, he didn't come out with full-throated support for that either. He was less condemning in his words, but he wasn't, out there supporting it. And he basically said he's always maintained that peaceful protest is fine, but once it transcends the law, then it's bad. So I think it would be a mix of some satisfaction. They are there. They are fighting for me. Other people believe in me, and that'd be a hard thing to not be satisfied with at some
Right.
level. But I think the moment he started seeing what was unfolding, he would
The
probably
potential for
go,
violence. The
"Yeah,
potential for violence. I think.
this
Yeah.
is not good, not good."
Right.
So that's my
Right.
thoughts on it, but I don't know.
Right.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think he had to be. It's almost like the most flattering thing in the world. That it's like it looks like they're all willing to go to war for him. I mean, that's what it looks like. But at the same time, he doesn't want them to actually go to war. I think if he knew that these people would go in there and there would be zero violence, and then no one would get hurt, I think that that would have him be. I think he would have been ecstatic with that. And I think as soon as it became evident that that's an impossible expectation for how this thing is going to unfold, that he was like, yeah, I don't want this on my head. So I don't think it took much coaxing from his team around him. I do think that his first reaction was like, wow, that's so like it's almost like blushing. Like,
Yeah,
like when someone like pays you like when someone comes and like they have like a certain reaction to you, you feel this power. It's a power rush and also like a flattery thing. Like you feel like, wow, that and but at the same time, then when you see that's the first moment, and then like a second later, it's sort of like, okay, this could be really, really bad, and and I don't want something bad to happen because of this. So that's why it's like, please just go home. Just go home.
I
Like
have an analog for it. It's when you
okay.
retweet someone who said something stupid, and then you see that they get a bunch of comments, and you're like, "Oh, that's great." And then you go look, and it's like Die, you idiot. It's like, oh, damn. Like, I was just hoping you'd call him fat. I wasn't hoping you'd call him to die, but
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
So
You see,
that's
you have that power. You
that.
have that power because you have like this massive audience. You retweet, like I put out a notice, I'm gonna be a Rocetta. It's like, okay, I got like 15 people like, oh, it's awesome. Then a couple might retweet it. As soon as you retweet it, all of a sudden it's like my fingers like exploding. I'm like, wow. So
So
you have that Trumpian type of influence,
scaled way
you know.
down, way
Right.
down. But
So
yeah,
what
but no, I think there is something to that because there is a flattery and a satisfaction that people agree, people are willing to take my side on this thing, and then at the
Mhm.
same time it's like, oh, some people go a little far, but it's like
Right.
I don't
And then
remember
this
tying
this
anyone
took
to train
this
tracks,
this took
but
a sudden awkward turn.
yeah. uh, okay, fake Mad Bomber said, would Dominion have helped Joe Biden steal the presidency if he was only a smallish righty? No. I think that's the safe answer there, without getting too much into it. I don't think Dominion would help anyone steal any presidency ever. Austin Heartless says, I can't wait for the Trump impeachment in 2023. If this one fails, just more stuff for me to laugh at.
Nice,
uh,
nice.
okay, so on to section 2.
Beautiful.
Statement of facts relevant to the article of impeachment. On January 6, 2021, rioters entered the Capitol building and wrought unprecedented havoc, mayhem, and death. I mean, briefly, though, it's not unprecedented. The White House was burned down at one point.
Okay. Yeah, I actually had forgotten that was true. And you're right.
It wasn't a protest, but it was,
Right.
I mean, it did happen.
But this is part of them this is
Yes.
part of them distancing Trump from the rioters, that they're basically like, no, those people were crazy. It had nothing to do with us. So I think that by referring to it that way, it's almost like they're showing that Trump and his legal team around him have utter disdain for the events of that day. And that almost reads like contrition for whatever partial blame he has. That's like, this is not something we ever thought would happen, ever wanted to happen. And now that it has happened, we recognize that this was just an awful situation. And that's good lawyering. That's what you have to do as far as standing up for your guy.
I fully
So,
agree. In a brazen attempt to further glorify violence, the House managers took several pages of their memorandum to restate over 50 sensationalized media reports detailing the horrific incidents and shocking violence of those hours. Counsel for the 45th president hereby stipulate that what happened at the Capitol by those criminals was horrible and horrific in every sense of those words. Their actions were utterly inexcusable and deserve robust and swift investigation and prosecution. As President Trump said in a video statement of condemnation, I want to be very clear. I unequivocally condemn the violence that we saw last week. Violence and vandalism have absolutely no place in our country and no place in our movement. Mr. Trump's comments echoed his sentiments expressed the day of the rally as he repeatedly urged protesters to stay peaceful and told rioters to go home. The House manager's compulsion. You looked up?
yeah.
Okay. The House
Oh, no,
manager.
no, no. I'm gonna mute myself because I was like, I just want to like go back to like just finishing.
Okay.
So you're reading. You're doing great. You're doing great.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
The House manager's compulsion to obfuscate the truth is born out of an absence of evidence relied upon in their statement of facts. As the body vested with the sole power to impeach, the House serves as an investigator and prosecutor. There was no investigation. The House abdicated that responsibility to the media. Of the 170 footnotes in the House manager's trial memorandum, there were only 3 citations to affidavits of 4 law enforcement officers, and they were merely referenced to support descriptions of what rioters were wearing and weapons that were found. The rest of the purported facts relied upon by these constitutionally charged prosecutors came from hearsay through the media. Okay, so that's the opening there. And again, the purpose of this was to distance Trump from the Capitol riots as much as possible, while also throwing the House investigators or the House impeachment managers in front of the proverbial train of this is entirely a hit job. They didn't focus on any actual facts. They're just in the pocket of the media. And remember, their audience are Republican senators who all believe this already. Even the chumpy ones like Mitch believe that. So,
No. And it's also saying you had no facts. You didn't even bother trying to find any facts.
right.
You just want to rush out and get this thing done. And instead of doing your own homework, you were lazy and relied on the leftist media to provide you with an impeachment and try and put a little bow on it. And here we are.
And it's probably important to note that a lot of the senators are also lawyers. And so
Yeah.
by pointing this out, this is where I think it's important that they're hammering on the process or the lack of process that's occurred in this. These people have spent their whole lives having to do a ton of work to make the case for their client or for the state if they were prosecutors.
Mhm.
And the House impeachment managers didn't do it. So they want to point out this is entirely political. It's entirely improper. They're lazy. They didn't do the work that you would have done if you would have done this. You would have gone, you would have investigated it. You would have put in the time and effort. They didn't do that because you would have
Yep.
had to. Otherwise, any result you got would have been overturned on an appeal. So, moving on, the single article of impeachment is belied by an analysis of Mr. Trump's spoken words to a crowd gathered at the Ellipse 4 on Saturday, or on January 6, 2021. At the demand of the Speaker of the House, certain members of the House drafted and introduced Resolution 24 impeaching Mr. Trump in his capacity as President of the United States. The single article titled Incitement of Insurrection charged Mr. Trump with engaging in high crimes and misdemeanors by inciting violence against the government of the United States. Incitement is the act of encouraging someone to do or feel something unpleasant or violent. An insurrection, unlike a riot, is an organized movement acting for the express purpose to overthrow and take possession of a government's powers. President Trump's speech on January 6, 2021 was not an act encouraging or an organized movement to overthrow the United States government. On January 6, 2021, Mr. Trump addressed a crowd of people who had gathered on the Ellipse, public land that is part of the President's Park next to the White House. Mr. Trump spoke for approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes. Of the over 10,000 words spoken, Mr. Trump used the word fight a little more than a handful of times, and each time in the figurative sense that has long been accepted in public discourse when urging people to stand and use their voices to be heard on matters important to them. It was not and could not be construed to encourage acts of violence. Notably absent from... They missed a period there. Notably absent from his speech was any reference to or encouragement of an insurrection, a riot, criminal action, or any acts of physical violence whatsoever. The only reference to force was in taking pride in his administration's creation of the Space Force. Mr. Trump never made any express or implied mention of weapons, the need for weapons, or anything of the sort. Instead, he simply called on those gathered to peacefully and patriotically use their voices. Mr. Trump's greeting the crowd by remarking on the honor he felt looking out at the many American patriots who are committed to the honesty of our elections and integrity of our glorious republic. He went on to thank the crowd for their extraordinary love, noting that that's what it is. There's never been a movement like this ever for the extraordinary love for this amazing country and this amazing movement. Thank you. Mr. Trump told those gathered that we're gathering in the heart of our nation's capital for one very, very basic and simple reason: to save our democracy. And Joe, if you have anything, feel free to jump in, by the way.
I just want to point out something that I never really thought of, and it's an argument that they imply about the phrase incitement of insurrection, all the way to the first paragraph here in subsection A,
Mm-hmm.
where they basically make a point here. It's a very weird thing to actually use those two terms together.
Yes.
Incite, insurrection. You incite a riot. You tend to incite chaos. You don't incite an insurrection, because an insurrection implies organization and a certain direction and coordination, and that there's and that there's basically a mad mastermind. You picture, Pinky in the Brain or whatever it is, or some brilliant Bond villain who's
Right.
sitting here, and they're creating, and they're saying, okay, this segment's going to flank around to the left, this segment's going to rush to the doors. That's how you have like an insurrection. It's sort of real, it's coordinated. And the phrase incitement almost implies chaos. So
Yes.
the phrase incite toward insurrection just sounds like, and it's a paradox. It's almost impossible to, you think it's almost difficult to actually conceive how such a thing can happen. And I never really thought about that until they actually defined those two terms the way they did at the outset of this, to basically say how backward this whole charge is in the first place.
Right. It should be a conspiracy to insurrection or an
Yes.
incitement to riot.
Yes.
One of those two
Yes.
things. Or both.
Exactly.
They could have, and had they put in the work, they would have just impeached him for both of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
They
you
could.
can.
And I think they basically said, well, we're a little afraid of doing that because a riot doesn't sound like insurrection. It doesn't sound like something that's coordinated. We don't want to say it's coordinated, and yet we want to say it's coordinated. They're sort of trying to walk this plank or this tightrope and get to somewhere that they can just sort of have a nexus between what happened and what he did in order to make something like criminal here without and that's why they're trying to. I don't know. I mean, the truth is, you're right. They could have brought two charges. They should have. If you bring two charges, maybe one of them sticks. Maybe one of them sounds more appealing to these lawyers sitting in the Senate.
Yeah,
But
that they hammered on this in their first response, their reply, not their reply brief, but their answer, which
right,
was only 14 pages. And in that answer, they mentioned you have two different theories going on, and the reason you can't do that on impeachment is because you actually vote, or the Senate will actually vote on each article of impeachment, and convicting on any one of those articles is a conviction, and is grounds for removal. But they have to have a clearly and singularly laid out act for each thing to vote on. For example, Bill Clinton was impeached with something like 14 counts, 12 or 14 counts, and I think 5 or 6 of them were different witness intimidations, but they had to lay out each witness intimidation separately, because what they have to do is convince enough senators that that act of witness intimidation merited removal. Not that the general act of witness intimidation as a pattern merits removal, because if you think that he did it one time but didn't do it another time, or that individual acts of witness intimidation are not enough to remove a president, that might be the disqualifying vote. So they can't combine these issues, because if you combine the issues, then you got someone who says, well, I think this part of it is impeachable, but this part of it isn't. And then you have another person who says, well, I think this part isn't impeachable, but the second part is. You get 2 votes when you should have only had 1 vote on each issue. So that's one of the problems they pointed out. And it really does create this mess. Incitement of insurrection, which I hadn't thought of, is legally almost impossible.
and if you're Chuck Schumer, you phrase it slightly different.
Yes, yes. Well, look, Chuck was a little excited. He was a little excited by Mr. Trump. Incited my erection. Okay, here we go. Now they're going to go into the speech a little bit more clearly. Nearly 20 minutes into his speech, Mr. Trump said, "I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard." Mr. Trump then spent approximately 30 to 40 minutes recapping some of his accomplishments as president and his beliefs on the outcome of the election, including the voting irregularities he attributed to the changes made in various states, purportedly in response to the pandemic, and his conversation with Georgia's Secretary of State. As Mr. Trump was winding down his speech, he again looked out at all those gathered, saying, "Looking out at all the amazing patriots here today, I've never been more confident in our nation's future." Although expressing some caution, Mr. Trump added, "We are the greatest country on earth, and we're headed in the right direction." With great hope, Mr. Trump went on to state, "As this enormous crowd shows, we have truth and justice on our side. We have a deep, enduring love for America in our hearts. We love our country. We have overwhelming pride in this great country, and we have it deep in our souls. Together, we are determined to defend and preserve government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Our brightest days are before us. Our greatest achievements still wait. I think one of our great achievements will be election security, because nobody, until I came along, had any idea how corrupt our elections were. And again, most people would stand there at 9 in the evening and say, 'I want to thank you very much,' and they go off on some other life. But I said, something's wrong here. Something's really wrong. Can't have happened. And we fight. We fight like hell. If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Our exciting adventures and boldest endeavors have not yet begun. My fellow Americans, for our movement, for our children, and for our beloved country, I say this: despite all that's happened, the best is yet to come." Mr. Trump concluded his speech at the ellipse stating, "So let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I want to thank you all. God bless you and God bless America. Thank you all for being here. This is incredible. Thank you very much. Thank you." Despite the House manager's charges against Mr. Trump, his statements cannot and could not reasonably be interpreted as a call to immediate violence or a call for a violent overthrow of the U.S. government.
You wait for me?
Yep.
You wait for me? Yeah, I mean, I think I think this might be aimed at the people on the left, like not the elitists, but the actual sheep that follow media, who have been hearing what do they hear from CNN? They hear a capsize where like Donald Trump in his speech before his speakers on January 6th, before the riot at the Capitol, used the word fight 18 times during the course of his speech. So that's why I think they're trying to break down that for all the people who only get their information from the media, and they're saying it sounds like to them, if you weren't listening to the speech, or you didn't know Donald Trump, or you thought of Donald Trump the way everyone on the left thinks of him, they actually pictured that he would say, "You're going to go in there, you're going to fight and tear those doors down." That's what you picture him saying, as opposed to him saying, "No, we're going to fight for election integrity and make sure our voices are heard," and how that's twisted by the media to make it sound as if he's basically handing out pitchforks and
Right.
everyone's got the torches, and that's why I think they're clarifying, so just to make it clear that like everything he was saying here was clearly never intended to mean physically fight and hurt people, and no violence was ever being promulgated or promoted. And I think that's why they're spelling all this. It's an important thing to spell out, because most of the people get their news from the twisted blurbs and the talking heads at CNN, MSNBC, ABC, all those alphabet idiots.
Right. And their legal analysis, and I'm talking about the news, is woefully inadequate on incitement. That's one thing that is hard to really convey enough. What it takes to actually incite violence is, it's almost a bridge too far for speech protections. Like it's so close to being impossible that for practically every instance it is.
Yeah.
And anyone who's actually convicted on incitement, I would wager, has one of two problems. One, they either confessed or made some severe statements about the desire to create a violent atmosphere, something like that, or they just didn't appeal. Like, I think that the actual cases where you're getting charged and convicted on incitement, and that charge actually legitimately sticking and not just sort of passing through with inadequate representation or whatever, are extremely limited. And we can go all the way back to Brandenburg versus Ohio, where incitement jurisprudence is really derived, and we see a combined KKK and neo-Nazi rally with some of the most horrific language you can imagine, and the Supreme Court going, "Yeah, but so
The speech.
yeah." And the fact that the KKK and other organizations can still gather in public places today, and I mean, heck, the last time I saw the KKK gathering, they got attacked and ended up exonerated, which was kind of crazy, because the guy stabbed some people in self-defense, and he was initially arrested, but they had to let him go. And they said, actually, we reviewed the footage, and this guy was attacked. And so the fact that the KKK, neo-Nazis, the Black Israelites or whatever, the Hebrew Israelites, that they can still be out on a sidewalk shows just how strong incitement protection actually is. It takes a massive, massive failure of lawyering or of your own defense to be convicted.
You practically have to say, "Go hurt those people over there right now."
Yeah.
That's pretty much what you have to say. That those people over there, that they're the ones who they're the ones who killed whatever. Those Jews over there, they're the ones who killed Jesus last week, and now we've got to make them pay. Otherwise, they're going to get away with it. And then it has to follow up like right away. right afterwards. They have to actually go and do it. If it happens like an hour later, it doesn't even count as incitement anymore.
No,
So
it's
that's why in the time and place and direction and how focused it has to be, it's just you're right. They basically, I agree with you. They went too far in protecting free speech by making it impossible for you to reach a
well,
legally criminal.
I didn't say they went too far. I think that's the right decision personally.
No,
I
I'm
d-
saying, okay. I mean, I understand that.
yeah.
I think it actually I think it is a little bit too far because I think sometimes you can rile someone up where it's like it doesn't have to be 5 minutes later. I don't think from that and at the same time I can respect your perspective on that. And I
I'm
mean you're taking a
I'm
very strong libertarian perspective where you're like,
yeah.
no, it has to be that basically you're telling someone go do it and then they do it like right away as a response to your action. And I think there's such a thing as incitement, which lasts a little bit longer or might not have to be quite as directed. But at the same time, I can understand that, you know what? I'd rather err on the side of giving too much free speech than too little free speech. And that's why anytime that the court gives too much free speech, I'm not gonna argue with it. I'm like, you know what? That's a better way to go than the opposite, which is what we're unfortunately starting to see more and more of from cancel culture from the left today. So,
Right, right. And that's where I go. Like I agree that there's certainly the ability to do it. Like there's certainly and if you don't want to take it to violence, you could take it towards like convincing people to kill themselves and stuff like that. I think certainly people can take their words too far. I'm just really hesitant about giving the government the power to prosecute any words at all ever.
right.
Like it just bothers me. So that's where I come down on that. Generalissimo says your hot dog crazed guess is right, Nick. You walk the line between good spirited mockery and rational anger. I don't always agree with you, but I value your integrity. P.S. Seriously, Joe, are you training?
Training.
I don't know, for maybe hot dog eating competition. Are you eating a hot dog?
Yeah, well, okay. I'm done. I was hungry. I hadn't eaten in like
No,
eight
I
hours.
didn't see what you were eating.
It was, yes, yes. I was actually like a little nervous because as I noted last time on your show that that your audience basically it's a mix of YouTube and lawyering and the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
A little bit.
And I thought, you know, you were gonna have like someone come out dancing in a little gold tuxedo jacket or something like that, and we'll do the time warp together. But so yeah, so I was a little nervous. Given that context, I'm like, I'm gonna go out there and eat a hot dog. This is just,
No, it's fine.
it's not the right call. Not the right. It's
How
not the right
how
call.
dare you besmirch the good name of this show as I'm over here drinking gin? Leave me alone.
I love your audience. I actually come. I'm one of the few guests. I don't know if there are any other guests who, like, after I came on your show, based on like in part you and in part the questions, I was like, you know what, I want to check out more of his shows. And when I come on, I don't know if there's like an etiquette because I was actually felt awkward. Like one time I came on and you have like these amazing moderators. Like I made one little comment there under the name Good Logic, and all of a sudden like your moderator there just started promoting me, pump me, like over and over again. Go check out Good Logic. You want another good lawyer? Go check out Good Logic. And I was like blushing with embarrassment. And that was the moment we were talking about before. I was like, okay, stop, because I don't want like Nick to think I'm like trying to hijack or like milk his show here. I'm coming on like 3 days later. I'm gonna like milk for like more audience members
No,
here.
I want people to do that.
All right.
I'm
Well,
brazenly capitalist. So,
oh, awesome.
uh,
All right. Let's get me to 2,000 subs tonight. Let's
yeah, guys,
do it.
check out Joe's show. By the way, it's down in the description. You
Yeah.
got to do is click on it and hit the subscribe button. Doesn't take you anything at all. Go do it. Okay. Democrat members of the House drafted the article of impeachment before any investigation into the riot had even started. Democrat members of the House Judiciary Committee publicly admitted that they began drafting the article of impeachment moments after angry extremists breached the doors of the Capitol. So they're in there. Remember, they're cowering for their lives, literally texting their aides like, "Get started drafting that impeachment. Here's the issues." Like this is
like AOC was like ducking bullets while she was also like writing there, like he incited.
Except AOC was only ducking bullets from a Capitol Police officer
Right.
far away from the actual protesters in a separate building a block and a half away. Did you see that, by the way?
Oh, and she got exposed for her whole telling of the hail of bullets that was coming at her. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we all we all saw how AOC did everything she could to try and and then some people are like, well, she never actually said like that she was there. And you look at them, you're like, well, what about this clip where she actually said, like it's like the people were barricading down her door. She's crazy. Like she
Turns
thinks
out
that like
turns out that
no
was a
one's gonna
Capitol
know.
Police officer going, "Hey AOC, are you all right?" Like that was the
Oh my
protester
god.
bashing her door in.
She's got
Oh
her
my,
PTSD from that knock on the door there when
yeah.
she saw a police officer there. I mean, I
Uh,
guess with her, where she's been saying defund the police for the last 8 months, where she sees every time she sees a cop, she thinks she's about to be raped.
well,
So
you know, at least 20% of the deaths, at least 20% of the deaths at the Capitol were caused by Capitol Police. So, I mean, to be fair, maybe she was right to be afraid.
yeah, I don't think that they were really gunning down congresswomen. I just don't. I don't think that was the first one in their line of fire.
Uh, the very next day, Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer called on Vice President Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment, concluding without any investigation, Mr. Trump incited the insurrection and continued to pose an imminent danger if he remained in office as president. 5 days later, on January 11th, 2020, House Democrats formally introduced Resolution 24. On January 12th, Speaker Pelosi announced the 9 representatives who would serve as the impeachment managers. One day later, on January 13th, House Democrats completed the fastest presidential impeachment inquiry in history and
Yeah.
adopted the article of impeachment over strong opposition and with zero due process afforded to Mr. Trump against constitutional requirements and centuries of practice. And I don't know if people realize that it was literally one day.
Hmm.
Like one day.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's almost as if they practiced it 9 times before.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like, hey, look, we got this thing streamlined. Like we know how to move this impeachment process along really fast. I guess when you do it 9 times before, it's really easy to get it done in one day.
Yeah, it's
And
almost like they had it ready and waiting.
so we're gonna go down that conspiracy road. You think that this
No,
was
no,
all
no.
Antifa?
No, I'm not. No, I'm just saying that they had basically ready to go the idea of impeachment for his entire presidency.
Yeah, well, they
Uh
clearly had the forms ready. They're like,
yeah.
okay, look, all the different, they have their checklist. Okay, so when we're starting impeachment, we have to get like these things done, and they basically have people tasked out to get it done. Okay, you cover John, you and John are going to do task number one, and we're going to get 6 people on task number two, and basically be able to get it done in one day. It's remarkably expeditious work. I
Right.
mean, it's you got to credit the organization. But
Yeah, if there's one
I
thing
guess
they're
by
good
now
at.
they could just cross out certain parts from like impeachment number 5 and just change the words a couple of times, to like update the dates, change the names, and we're good to go.
Turns out,
So
yeah, the original draft that was submitted is actually on lined paper and it has a bunch of crossouts and like some crayon scribbling in. Oh my god.
well,
Um
that's if AOC was part of the whole drafting thing. So
okay, so the statement of facts outlines a narrative irrelevant to the facts alleged in support of a single article of impeachment. The House managers spent nearly 35 of their 77-page trial memorandum rehashing stories written by the media of mischaracterized statements attributed to Mr. Trump many months before Mr. Trump addressed the crowd at the Ellipse in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021. Media reports and reporters' opinions are not facts, and most assuredly are not facts that should form the basis for instituting the grave power of impeachment. More significantly, however, Mr. Trump was never charged in the articles of impeachment with the claims made in these various reports. Now, this is good argument, but it goes to the nature of an impeachment that it is a political process, right? They don't have to convict Trump under the same standards that they would convict someone in criminal court for incitement, and they know it, and that's why they're able to include a bunch of stuff that would not be able to be included under the federal rules of evidence, right? You
okay, so
couldn't.
if you're a lawyer though, let's say you're the lawyer for Trump here, okay? So you're Mr. Castor, Mr. Schoen, whatever, and they add Mr. Riquetta as the fourth name on here, okay? So you're going to focus your papers though in a way as if they do have to keep into this yardstick of meeting a legal definition of incitement.
Right.
So I mean, and that's the way you had. Yeah, you're right. Technically, we heard at the last impeachment a year ago that, well, even if he didn't commit a crime, still that could be impeachable because they're trying to water down so much like what impeachment means and how easy it is to get impeached that you don't have to commit a legal crime, you don't have to be in office. That so the question is, do you want to meet them on that ground, or you want to make it that if you want to hold up to this, we're going to keep you to this legal standard. I'm not playing into your perspective here that this is political. You want to make it political, but we're going to make the point that you have to prove that there's legal incitement here, and there very clearly was not legal incitement here. So I like taking that road. That we're not going to give you any easy pass here and just say, well, it's close enough to being incitement, but that if it's not legal incitement, that there's no way that this becomes an impeachable offense. And I think that that's an important. It's important to bring the fight on that battleground as opposed to the battleground that the Democrats want to have it on.
Right. I think it's important too because it's persuasive. It's like,
Mhm.
wait a minute, are we really going to impeach someone who didn't commit a crime? There wasn't a criminal act, but we are held to the standard of high crimes and misdemeanors. Like the founders may have left wiggle room to impeach for basically anything, even if it's not codified, but the basic idea is still there. This is a criminal act. This is egregious enough that we would be prosecuting it if possible. But we're
Yeah.
just acknowledging that not everything can be prosecuted. Bad Vibe says, you see Waters walking back her comments about harassment of Trump's cabinet, i.e. supporters. I find it funny that when held to the same standards, they cower in fear. Oh, is Maxine Waters walking that back now that it's
I
been
never heard. I
put in
never
this
heard that she
document?
did that. I mean,
Uh,
yeah, it's easy to say. Yeah, now that he's out of office, she's not saying get in their face anymore and tell them they're not welcome. But when for 4 years that wasn't. She never walked that back for a
no.
single day.
It would have been today, I think, would be when she did it because her quotes are on page 63 or whatever of this document. I mean, like specifically that quote is on page 63 or 64. So I think
Yeah.
that's she's like, no, I didn't mean that to be
And
violence.
by the way, this comes to the whole First Amendment incitement thing that you brought up. I don't know if you recall when Ivanka and Jared were on a plane one time, like they actually were harassed by people who were like basically saying like we don't want you Trumps on the plane here, and like she actually, you can say that what Maxine Waters incited her followers to do might have had an influence there that people felt emboldened to say, yeah, I can walk up to Trump and say, I don't want you here on my plane. And I can harass people like that. Now, that would not be legally incitement because it's not close enough in time and or direction and stuff like that.
Right.
But that's way closer towards actually inciting people towards being violent or abusive or act improperly or in an illegal manner than anything that Donald Trump said in his speech or any speech he ever gave.
Yeah,
So,
the big problem that they have with Trump's speech is so ignoring the ridiculously high bar that incitement generally has, he doesn't actually call anyone to do anything that happened.
right.
That's a weird. But I just thought of something. You know what's weird about incitement law? And we're talking about this temporal aspect of it, right? Temporal
Mhm.
and proximal aspect of it. With social media, it kind of changes the dynamic, right? Because you might make a tweet on Thursday that I don't see until Sunday. What if I kill
Ooh.
someone because of what you said, but I only saw the tweet 5 minutes before killing someone, even though you made it 2 days before?
I don't see how that could be incitement because think about it. If you wrote 20 years ago, if you wrote a book, no,
Right.
seriously, think. I
No,
mean,
I
I'm
get
gonna
it.
if you wrote a book and I read that book a year and a half after you wrote it, and that inspired me. And your book is basically how you hate John Smith, and that inspired, and that he should die, and anyone who sees this should kill him. And then a year and a half later, I read it, And I'm like, yeah, he's right. John Smith is a jerk. I really should kill him, and he's my next door neighbor, so I'm going to. And then he does. I don't think that's incitement. Like I don't see how that possibly rises to a level of incitement. So a tweet, and in fact, in general, I don't know if a tweet could be incitable because you have to sort of be. I always pictured incitement. Look, I haven't really researched incitement. I don't, so no one quote me on the law here, but I would think that incitement, there's almost like a face-to-face aspect to it, or at least I don't know if I write words that those words can be interpreted as inciting. If you write a newspaper article, that could be
Mm-hmm.
deemed incitement legally. Is that really the standard? Are you familiar enough with incitement that you can enlighten us on this?
Uh, no. Uh, I don't think anybody knows the extensive incitement on online speech or on printed text, and how that changes now. I was just thinking about it as a sort of musing, but I did catch what you did there. I
What was that?
got it, and now you have incited me to violence against Mitt Romney by using John Smith as a dog whistle against Mormons.
Okay,
See,
look, I know if everyone's circling around Mitt Romney's house after they heard my speech just now, and I'm just gonna tell you, please just go home.
oh,
Any of you who
oh,
breach his,
listen to the continued whistling. He's calling to everyone to go attack him now. Uh every game
yeah,
played says, "Are we going to forget Steve Scalise getting shot by a Bernie bro or the ICE agent that got shot after rep airport designation spoke out about ICE?" No. We don't have to forget about those. Um that's just here's the thing. My position is consistent on all of them. I don't think anybody incited any violence. I think people may need to tone down their rhetoric personally. I think that is wisdom in general. But I don't think they incited violence. Just because a crazy person went ahead and pulled a trigger doesn't mean that someone wanted that trigger pulled. That's until they show me that they actually wanted it pulled. I'm not willing to put that on people personally.
before you
Um,
go further in reading
yeah.
this, I just want to point out I'm very impressed with your level of respect that you have for your audience, that you use the words temporal and proximal and did not actually define them. You just said, look, I got 3,000 people watch this, whatever, and they should know what that means. And if not, I don't care.
I do the same thing when I teach at our high school homeschool co-op, because I've realized that if you treat people with a high enough level of respect, that they always exceed your expectations. In an I will say in an educational setting,
Mhm.
or in a camaraderie setting, either one. And I think we spend way too much time underestimating people in general, and I think that doesn't lead to good communication. So, yeah.
When I
Uh,
was three
but
years old, my father would say to me, like, you better cease and desist or I'll be forced to take punitive measures. That's literally how my dad spoke to me. You better cease and desist or I'll be forced to take punitive measures. And that's how I end up with this ridiculous vocabulary where when you say temporal and proximal, and proximal, I'm like, yeah, let's move forward.
well, my wife and I have always talked to our children like they're people, not like they're babies.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that too.
yeah, so that's but thanks for noticing.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, law enforcement had reports of a potential attack on the Capitol several days before President Trump's speech, and this has been one of the weirdly most conflicting reported things lately. Like, did law enforcement know there was going to be a riot or not? Because there's some reports saying yes, some reports saying we completely failed. The Capitol Police Chief came out the other day and said intelligence communities had no idea that this was going to happen. They all missed it. But then at the same time, there's reports. Yeah, we saw it. We saw it was going to happen. It was on Facebook. Like what? What the hell?
Everyone knew. It was like a whole watch party.
Like I knew people were going to the Capitol, and people asked me if I was going to go, and my response to any mass gathering is no. I'm too old to be stabbed.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah.
so
So
there's always
we
potential for
all
it.
before, if you heard of anyone who was going to that, so you just like you had a fear of danger happening there. The excuse me, the danger that we all anticipated was Antifa versus MAGA. There's going to
Yeah.
be like stabbings. There's going to be like punching each other. Nobody was anticipating a breach of the Capitol. That was not on the game plan. We even talked about this at the outset, that
Yeah.
when we were predicting what was going to happen on January 6th, no one foresaw that. So, yeah, this paragraph here should be interesting. Maybe like, I mean, because they talk about the FBI and what they knew. I never heard this before. I didn't know that everyone knew that, like, oh, of course, breaching the Capitol, that was always like a possibility that we should be genuinely concerned about. Because when it happened, I remember where I was when it happened. I thought that was like a big moment, and like everyone's going to remember where they are when they hear about the Capitol being breached. That's a pretty big deal.
Right.
So,
Now, to play devil's advocate, Malcolm Gladwell had a great piece. I think it was in the Atlantic or in the New Yorker. I'm not sure which one. I read it in his book, What the Dog Saw, which is a collection of his works. And it was talking about looking back on 9/11, I think 10 years later. And when they determined that, they had reports about 9/11, that the credible threats about 9/11 on the day, they knew they had the info, right? But they all missed it.
mhm.
Okay. And so what Malcolm does is he analogizes 9/11 to the Challenger explosion, which I thought was great. Because when they did the report years later on the Challenger explosion, the O-ring that failed, had tested yellow, a yellow flag versus a green flag, right? And so in theory, they had knowledge of the yellow flag on the O-ring. They could have known, they could have prevented the explosion of the Challenger by inspecting this O-ring. But when you get into just how much information they had and just how many yellow flags that they had on the Challenger, it
Yeah,
turns out that having the knowledge about the defective O-ring, they had knowledge about like 10,000 defective things. And
yeah,
pursuing all of them would be an impossibility. And the same thing with 9/11. And I think there could be an argument made that says that sure, they had information that the White House is going to be stormed, but they're also concerned about Antifa coming. They're concerned about Black Lives Matter showing up. They're concerned about violence away from the Capitol building. They don't know what exactly is going to happen. So I'm kind of wondering, like, how much of this is lost in that intelligence miasma that's out there. Like, we have such a flood of information because they watch everything that that they couldn't pinpoint down a particular event. So, but it
right.
makes for a great legal argument.
But you're right. Like when you have this, um, we have a waterfall of information, and most of it is really useless or innocuous. So you don't really. Then it's very easy to pick out that droplet of water that came through and say, "See, it was there in the waterfall. Why didn't you pick it up?" And it's like, are you kidding me? There was a bloody waterfall there. I can't.
Right.
If I'm going to worry about every single drop there, then I'm going to, there's no way anyone could actually assess that this one is a more credible threat than the other one based on the information we had at that time. And it's Monday morning quarterback to say, well, you should have known better about that O-ring on Challenger. I mean, I'm sure that you're right. That it being yellow was not something that was like a big red flag that everyone's like that afterwards everyone's like, yeah, everything was green, 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 and the one yellow thing, that's what
Yeah.
made Challenger blow up. I'm sure there was plenty of other yellow. Some might have been orange.
I
You
think
know,
I think they'd also done 4 shuttle launches with yellow O-ring, like with yellow flagged O-ring too.
that's what I'm saying.
Uh
And not just O-rings, but like, these flipper switches or the rocket booster here or whatever. That,
right.
there's always the connection between this rocket booster and that rocket booster, that it was yellow. You're right. There's just an overflow of information. So too, when you have a threat on the Capitol and people breaking in there, they probably, when they get an intelligence report, I am sure that there's like 300 things on intelligence report about concerns that should be for today, and they try and prioritize based on what's most likely concerned. The one thing that did stick out to me is the video where you see police officers that actually look like they're waving people in toward the Capitol. I don't understand
Look, we don't
what.
whoa. We don't want to talk about that reality. Let's
I don't even understand that, but that would be consistent with this whole thing about like this was a known thing. It's almost like, yeah, okay, it was known. I mean, does that mean that there's people on the left who was doing it, people on the right doing it? Like who's like, why would any cop be waving them in? I don't want to. We're here on this thing. I don't want to
Yeah.
tie you, draw you away from that.
I
But
like being drawn away.
Okay. I guess that's why I'm here, right? If you were just going to read this to yourself, you wouldn't need me. But
No, no,
I just I wonder about that whole thing and whether this ties into what the FBI knew or has investigated and found about pre-coordination about what was going to happen on that day.
yeah, and I've seen the video. I've heard the accounts that the Capitol Police were letting people in, and honestly, like because it's always important to remember that there are non-nefarious reasons that this might happen. There could have been just a complete breakdown in communication. That could simply explain it. Although, you can go the other way and say that it was a conspiracy to engineer a sort of chaotic event, and you can pick whoever you want to be in charge of that conspiracy. There are equal measures to say, well, Republicans thought they could get a benefit and overturn the election, or you could say Democrats thought they could create a spectacle that they could use as a bludgeon and solidify the position. There's no real way to know what happened there, but it is important to remember that yes, some of the people going in, and this would be a hallmark of my defense if I were defending anyone who is accused of illegally breaching the Capitol building. Of it would be they literally let me in, bro. Like they literally pulled aside the barricade and said, "Yeah, go ahead and go in." And that's why we had these goofy ass smiles on our faces in all the video, and we're
And
walking
people
around.
taking a lecture now, yeah, like
Right.
the whole thing was a joke. And the whole thing was an obvious joke as it was happening. No one took it like it was being serious. In fact, for days afterwards, I didn't believe anyone actually died in there. Like I was like, why would I think? It just seemed like the whole thing was like not violent. You got crazy Buffalo Bill up there sitting in Nancy Pelosi's chair. You got this weird Cato Kalin guy walking off with Nancy's podium. I mean, the whole thing just seemed like it was
Kato
like not
Galen
like a
guy.
serious insurrection dangerous thing. And then you hear afterwards. I mean, until the woman was shot. When
Right.
Ashley got shot, when that happened, everything got like very somber, very serious. Like, okay, this has to stop. This is bad. Like someone's like people are one person is possibly dead. At that point, we didn't know her status, but she seemed like she was certainly going to be critical, and more people could get hurt. At that point, the party was over. It's like, okay, get out. Like, just this is not a joke anymore.
Yeah.
But
And
but at first, it didn't seem that threatening. The whole situation didn't seem like they're out to kill AOC. Like that's not how it came across.
did you yeah, and they haven't, they walked back that initial assertion that was in one of the briefs, one of the criminal charging documents in Arizona that said they had capture and kill teams or whatever planned. And then the DOJ came out and was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. We don't have any evidence for that. You need to go ahead and take that out of your complaint or that's going to get overturned." But what's interesting though is I was talking to someone about this, and they brought up this guy who apparently saved all of the Congress people by like distracting the entire mob and leading them away. He's a Capitol Police officer, and like when you picture this out, like you have to realize there's an angry, frothing mob in this narrative, right? Who's out to
Mhm.
murder Congress people. And a brave Capitol Police officer comes up and does the children's television thing of going, "Hey guys, over here," and then runs, and they're like, "Ah!" And they go chase that guy and forget that they're trying to murder Congress. Like and this guy's been like heaped with praise for saving all of them. It's like, wait a minute, are we believing this story? Like that the angry murder mob was distracted by a guy going, "Over here, guys," and then running away. They're like, "We don't
Yeah, I
care
just
about." It's
like,
like,
did he have sock puppets on his hands? Like, but you
uh,
know what? It fits with their perspective that everyone from MAGA, everyone who supports Trump, anyone who's at this rally, they're a bunch of moronic rubes, and their whole narrative that only everyone who votes left is like this educated and intelligent and just like and everyone who would ever think of voting for Trump or supporting him coming to a rally is some idiot who would easily be diverted by a yokel say, "Hey guys, let's run down this hallway over here," and that they would be so easily duped
yeah,
and calm down from whatever it is that
I
shenanigans that he was playing.
because I mean I haven't been part of any murder mobs, but if I were, I find it hard to believe that I'd be distracted from my sacred mission of killing Congress by going after a Capitol Police officer who is identifiably not Congress. Like, like, wait, you're not on my provided list
Kill
of
list.
targets?
You know,
Like,
yeah.
I don't get it. I don't get
I
it.
got a check. I got a scavenger hunt here of who I'm supposed to kill, and you're not on it. So
Right,
I'm not chasing that at
right.
all. I
Uh,
don't know.
so
But they think that everyone on the right are a bunch of morons, that we are so easily distracted. So to them, this all makes sense. That yeah, of course, that would work. Because it's like almost like everyone who's in MAGA is like one of the Three Stooges, and it's like yeah, of course we got Larry and Moe to start running down this hallway just by going yuck yuck or whatever they do.
yeah, it's just that one was wild to me. Kyle J says this moment in history was unprecedented. A rally during an opposing political party's inauguration, the storming of the Capitol, and an impeachment of a non-sitting president. It was 99.99% peaceful though, right? Yes. Yes, it was. Okay. Despite going to great lengths to include irrelevant information regarding Mr. Trump's comments dating back to August 2020 and various postings on social media, the House managers are silent on one very chilling fact. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has confirmed that the breach of the Capitol was planned several days in advance of the rally and that therefore had nothing to do with the president's speech on January 6th at the Ellipse. According to investigative reports, all released after January 6th, the Capitol Police, the NYPD, and the FBI, the NYPD, and that's weird,
Yeah, why are they there? I don't know.
all had prior warning there was going to be an attack on the Capitol. Embarrassingly enough, even members of the Democratic leadership themselves have admitted on the record, albeit subsequent to January 6th, that they believe the riots were pre-planned, with some, including Representative James C. Clyburn, the House Democratic whip, going so far as to accuse fellow House members of coordinating and planning the attack in advance as co-conspirators. The problem with that claim, of course, is that while the House managers are clearly eager to make the most of this tragedy for their own purely personal political gain, House leadership simply cannot have it both ways. Either the president incited the riots, like the article claims, or the riots were pre-planned by a small group of criminals who deserve punishment to the fullest extent of the law. That was loud. It's a clock.
I don't know. I
It's
For
not
the
even
last
a
2 weeks, that goes off.
normal.
So the last 2 weeks, like every couple hours, that goes off like randomly. I think it's like the cold in my doorbell. I don't even know.
Oh, okay. Uh, 33 representatives are only now calling for investigations into members across the aisle. The real truth is that the people who criminally breached the Capitol did so of their own accord and for their own reasons, and they are being criminally prosecuted. While never willing to allow a good crisis to go to waste, the Democratic leadership is incapable of understanding that not everything can always be blamed on their political adversaries, no matter how very badly they may wish to exploit any moment of uncertainty on the part of the American people. Even a cursory investigation would have disproved the House's theory of incitement. However, Speaker Pelosi did not grant the president any of his constitutionally mandated due process rights. I want to focus on something they said here because I think this is a really good. They've got two great things in this last paragraph. One, they're hitting the never let a good crisis go to waste, which is Rahm Emanuel, a very classic line hearkening back to the Obama administration. And then second, they may wish to exploit any moment of uncertainty on the part of the American people. And what they're doing, I think, is this is a very subtle signal to the Republicans in the room that this disapproval of the Capitol and of Donald Trump is literally momentary. And every single day that passes, we see how momentary it actually is. Because I think if you talk to Republicans on January 7th and you talk to Republicans today, you're going to get vastly different interpretations of what went on in the Capitol and how bad it was. Now that about a month has passed, people have cooled off.
And that's why, by the way, I don't fully agree with you that Donald Trump has no chance of ever coming back. And that's why I think these people are turning on Donald Trump, because no one remembers anything that happened. Can you remember anything that happened 3 years ago, much less 2 years ago, a year ago? No. Can you remember anything that happened from 2019? We didn't remember
told
when
me
the last impeachment was.
Yeah, you told me the impeachment was in December, and I was like, really? I thought it was like 2017 or something. But
yeah. But
no,
my point is, so now 4 years from now, I cannot imagine that people are going to remember the Capitol as being such a terrible thing that Trump is not going to have any chance of actually coming back. And that's why I don't think I think they are legitimately concerned about Donald, like like running again in 2024.
My pushback is you said people won't remember, and I agree with that. But congressmen aren't people, and neither are businesses. And those are the two things: the donors, the donor cast, and the other politicians. I don't think they will forget. And I'm talking about the Republicans. I'm not talking
Right.
about like the Democrats are going to shriek about whatever. But I think Trump will have a problem developing an organizational structure in 4 years because I think the Republican infrastructure and the money will be hard to acquire on the big numbers needed for a presidential election. That's my
And we
personal
saw,
opinion.
well, the truth is, you're right in that we saw how quickly that evaporated under his feet like sand. That just
Yeah.
ran away underneath. And as soon as everyone smelled that he was cooked, like the rhino faces came out and they just turned tail and they stabbed him. I mean, they literally stabbed him in the back from Mitch McConnell
Yeah, I mean, 2 months
on
ago,
down.
Mitch McConnell was a hero with AOC,
Yeah,
or with not with AOC, with
with
ACB.
Trump. Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
exactly. Yeah, when he came forward with Amy Coney Barrett and everything like that, yeah, everyone loved him. In fact, right even after the election, it took him a while before he turned on Trump. But when he did, he led the charge of like this election's over and we're moving onward, and that sent a signal to the rest of the rhinos that like okay, we're turning tail on Trump right now, and you could
mhm.
see how quickly it just like everything crumbled, and that's why I think that you're right that to him to regain that the establishment right is never going to support him. That you're right on. They will
Yeah.
never support him.
Now he may be
But
able to overcome that. I think he's going to have real trouble, and I think that because of that real trouble, he may decide it's just not really necessary to do so. And I keep going back to this analogy of not Andrew Jackson, whatchamacallit, Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton. Trump has, Hamilton basically got cooked by his own private scandal, and then he knew he wasn't going to be president ever. And at that point, rather than running for president with the scandal being something that his foes, particularly Jefferson, could hammer over his head, he went ahead and just created a newspaper, and that newspaper still exists today. And I think that what we
which
might see,
paper?
the New York Post.
He created. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Like I actually just read about this scandal that you're referring to literally last night in like the history bathroom reader. I was like reading about this scandal about how the Reynolds couple basically were like the scam artists who basically she duped him into like starting an affair with him, and then they
Yeah.
blackmailed him until he basically had to admit it to different members of Congress. But yeah, apparently your history knowledge that you just like were able to whip that off the cuff
Look,
is far superior.
I've seen Hamilton a couple times.
Oh, I didn't see. I never saw that. Oh, you see, I never. I didn't. That's what the play is about. Is that really what it's about? The whole thing?
No, no, the play. I mean, the play is just kind of a very short review of his life in general. But
Uh,
that's a big plot point is when he because he's a massive political animal,
mhm.
and had all signs of basically being able to
Be a
run for
president.
president, and then it gets crushed, and so he creates the Post, and ends up just being a political influence that way. And the Post is still around, and I think we've seen echoes of that with some of Trump's professed, if nothing else, ambitions of possibly creating a media company, and he's been teasing it. And if he does that, I don't know that he wastes his time going back to being president when he could be, a conservative kingmaker, so to speak.
Look. First of all, thank you so much for spoiling Hamilton for me. Second of all,
It's a good show.
really
You should
appreciate
watch it
that.
anyway.
No, but second of all, I mean, look, we saw Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey. They're more powerful than a president.
By far.
So why would Trump want to step if he did put the energy into becoming a social media giant? Why would he want to step down from that to just being president of the United States? That would be kind of silly.
Not only are they more powerful than the president, they're more powerful than all governments, as we've
Yeah,
seen, because they just go ahead and censor governments now. That's a thing that they're just doing. Like, oh,
and
Uganda, go. Myanmar, done.
and here's the crazy thing: it's not just social media. Even Jeff Bezos, it's like you would think, okay, Amazon, that's a store or an online store, but I'm saying is you would think that no, he's also a kingmaker. that basically, if you find a big enough niche in anywhere in big tech, you are going to be one of the seven kings of the world.
Yeah.
Uh,
Bad Vibe says, I think you are missing the bigger part. Remember, the left was questioning Trump's word and pushing the population through projection before the election. Well, yeah. Smiley Chris says 45 already voted it was unconstitutional, so they can't impeach somebody if it is unconstitutional. So they can't go against their own votes. So Trump gets a freebie if he doesn't show the evidence. Thumbs down. No. That procedural vote by Rand Paul, it's important to recognize what didn't happen there. What didn't happen was Congress did not say it was unconstitutional. So while 45 of them voted that it was unconstitutional, and to go against that would be them going back on their initial word to some extent, and they could be politically accountable to that, the Senate didn't find it unconstitutional, which means for the purposes of the Senate and the senators participating, including the Republicans, it is constitutional, even if it shouldn't be. And so they do have cover to change their mind. I just want to point that out. That's the alternative side of that. Like, it's good that they got 45 Republicans to put their names on paper and say this is unconstitutional, but at the same time, they have enough ammunition to do it if they really feel compelled. I don't think they will, but they're not bound by that vote in any way. And if Trump,
do you think a single Democrat is going to vote against impeachment?
no,
Not one. Like
no,
Manchin, like no.
no, I think even Manchin will vote for it. I think we may see a couple Republicans vote for it as well. I don't think we'll see 5 though.
McConnell? You think McConnell's going to?
No, I don't think McConnell will vote for impeachment. I think a
Really?
couple of them, are walking that line of, well, we want to hear it. We think it's constitutional to bring it, but we're not going to go through with it. I think there's a couple on that side. And I think McConnell is there because I think McConnell's he's a turtle, but he's also a snake. And so I think he's shrewd enough to know that if he votes for impeachment in Kentucky, he's done. Like, I think he's actually done. And I don't think he's willing to do that. I think he's too slippery.
But he's really old. Is he planning on running again?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's the complicating factor. He did just win re-election for 6 years, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he's already 140.
Yeah. and the snake actually rode Trump, who basically got him, like, pushed him hard for on a re-election. He just completely turned on him as soon as the Kentucky election was over. He's like, "Yeah, I'm out of here."
Yeah. So he might. I mean, he might do it. I don't think he will though. But we'll have to see. I think Romney might.
Oh, Romney's definitely going to turn on against him. Romney hates him. Romney probably wrote the articles of impeachment.
No, he had one of his binders full of women do it. It just so happens
you're dating yourself with that one.
They're all Democrat congresswomen.
So Murkowski, you're saying also she's gonna go along and try to impeach him?
I think she might. I don't know. I don't know who's gonna do it. I think Romney's a good bet, but they had 5 say it was constitutional. I don't think they're gonna have 5 go for it.
Okay.
But that's me. By the way, you're up to 900 subs. Guys, go sub to Joe. Keep it going. Get him up to 1,000. We can do it. If you get Joe up to 1,000 subs, I'll take a double shot of liquor. There you go.
Awesome. Nice.
All right.
Does the double shot, like, does that hit you? Are you like, you're like Polish? I don't know how Polacks. Polish.
Oh,
people.
how dare you? How dare you besmirch the good name of my people?
How do Polish people hold their alcohol? Is there like a thing?
I don't know. I think I'm kind of a lightweight, personally.
Are you?
I didn't really start drinking till I was in law school.
Oh.
So, and I entered law school at like 31 or 32 or whatever.
Wow.
So I, I've only been drinking about 8 years in general. So I don't think I hold my liquor that well at all. But the magic of television, it looks like I drink a whole lot, and I really don't.
Yeah.
But well, sometimes I do. That second debate, I did. Okay. Uh, all right. So back to this. A simple timeline of events demonstrates conclusively that the riots were not inspired by the president's speech at the Ellipse. The Capitol is 1.6 miles away from Ellipse Park, which is near the White House. This is approximately a 30 to 33-minute walk. Trump began addressing the crowd at 11:58 a.m. and made his final remarks at 1:12 p.m. Protesters, activists, and rioters had already breached the Capitol grounds a mile away 19 minutes prior to the end of President Trump's speech. And this, of course, is a big problem for them.
Ooh. Yeah, that's a really great point. That's like actual like investigation and evidence. That like, hey, if he's inciting them, how is it that people who weren't hearing him were the ones who were breaching? That kind of is a monkey wrench in this whole if you want to convict him on incitement.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to say that they do, unless they would think that he was like they had left his speech and they're like, yeah, let's go kill him and started running there, but there's absolutely no video evidence of anything of the kind happening. So yeah, that actually to me that would be like the death knell. Like if there was like an actual real trial going on here, you say how on earth if it takes 30 minutes to walk from here to A to B, how is it that it was breached 19 minutes after he finished speaking? That doesn't make it, and that he was the cause of it. Yeah. That's a great
Apparently,
point.
someone's saying that the link I put in the description is broken, but I don't think so. People are still subscribing, so it's working. We're at 982. No, but it's this idea, and this is that temporal and proximal aspect of it. It's really hard to incite someone to travel 30 minutes, a mile and a half by foot to go do something in the past. Like that's the real wrinkle, right? Because to go to the past, you need to be traveling really quickly, like 88.8 miles an hour to get back in time to before Trump's speech was over. And this is the big thing. I mean, I guess your argument is that people were watching his speech on their phones and then were incited to breach the Capitol, but like that doesn't really hold to me to work.
Or they were saying that people left his speech in the middle. They got so riled up and agitated. They're like, I'm not waiting for Trump to finish. I'm going to go right now and breach the Capitol. But
right, and
only someone
they do hit that in the next page or two here. I'm pouring my double shot. This is going to be brutal.
Oh, does that mean I got 1,000? Does that mean I hit 1,000 subs?
You are over 1,000 subs. You're over 1,000 subs.
God bless you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so very much. I gotta get my YouTube pop-up notification about that.
To 100,000 more.
I should get a drink. I should really get a drink for that.
Yeah, go for it. I'll hold this until you're back. Yeah. I'll start reading the next paragraph. All right, the House manager's false narrative rests entirely on bias and mischaracterized reports by the media and cherry-picked non-contextual parsing of Mr. Trump's January 6th speech. Contrary to the false narrative set forth by the House managers, Mr. Trump's speech was never directed to inciting or producing any imminent lawless action. It is important to read the speech in its entirety because the House managers played shamefully fast and loose with the truth as they for its content, along with content from other speeches made to other audiences. Oh, he killed the phone. For their trial memorandum. Desperately searching for incitement and desperate to deflect attention away from the glaring inability to show an insurrection. And this is no small matter because their demonstrably false claims go right to the heart of their main allegation. Okay, are you prepared, sir?
Yes.
What are you drinking?
Glenrock.
Oh, I have 1792 bottled in bond. So you went Scotch, I went bourbon.
But I never go bourbon.
Really, you're not a bourbon guy?
No, I'm all Scotch, single malt, well-aged Scotch. Bourbon hits my chest.
Such a lawyer.
If I had rocks on me, I would be throwing them in here. Yeah, so I will raise a glass to your marvelous audience, who I guess a few more of them are my audience now as well. God bless them. God bless you. It's just a jump to the left
All righty.
and a step to the right. Uh,
Ooh. Oh,
you never saw Rocky Horror Picture.
no. No,
That
I've
was a
avoided it.
reference.
I've avoided it like the plague that it is.
Oh, I'm
uh,
sure several in your audience would have gotten that reference.
yes. Not me though. Bad Vibe says Nick holds his liquor in his nose. Just watch it as it gets redder and the camera fights its autofocus. This is true. This is true. Okay, back to the document. Democrats cannot pretend that they were confused by the word fight in the context President Trump used it in his speech. Speaker Pelosi has used the word multiple times herself in the context of election security. And the well-known nonprofit started by rising Democratic darling Stacey Abrams and endorsed by none other than Speaker Pelosi is literally called Fair Fight, and it asks people to join the fight for free and fair elections. And yet, in her comments during the impeachment debate, Speaker Pelosi adjusted the truth by conflating the parts of the president's speech in which he talked about marching peacefully to the Capitol at the part of the speech addressing the need to fight for election security. She lied to the American people, saying they were sent here by the president with words such as cry to fight like hell. Incredibly enough, her very next words were words matter, truth matters, accountability matters.
You know that they were laughing when they wrote those words, Democratic darling Stacey Abrams.
Oh,
You know
yeah.
by the way, a lot of lawyers don't like writing with that style, that type of really aggressive type of style. But I have to hold myself back from avoiding writing that way. I'm very to be like sort of almost artsy and like mocking your opponents about their idiocy. I
it,
happen to be a big fan of it. I
it
think that it's
depends where
effective.
you are, too. Like in some federal courts, you don't want to write like that at all. But in some state courts, you really, really want to write like that because you got a judge who's a little bit of a firebrand and more of a person.
Right.
And I think this is the place for as much showmanship as possible. And that was actually when they released their initial answer. Viva Fry and I had a little bit of a different take. I called it an epic response. Look, I was being a little clickbaity. And he called it a lackluster response. But at the end of the day, you know, he wanted them to lay out what this brief is doing in that document. I mean, he wanted them to really put the hammer down. And I think that there is a place for it. And if there is any place for it, it's in impeachment. I mean, because this is your chance. Again, you don't have a judge. You don't have a judge to piss off. You have
Right.
an audience.
And that's why I agree with you that, you know, and no one, if you're not a lawyer, it's not even just being a lawyer. You have to actually be an experienced lawyer to recognize that there's a time and a place for the tone to be different. And there's an appropriate tone you want to use with a judge, and especially federal judges who are a little bit more starch and have a little more starch in their shirts. You don't want to be picking on your opponent in a way that might be deemed petty. And
Right.
I would never put this in a paper that's being filed in federal court. But I agree with you that in this setting where everyone knows you hate us, we hate you, there's no judge here who's going to sit here and get angry. There's no individual who's going to sit here and start ruling against you because they think you're being a jackass, but that they'll basically, you know, that you can sort of sling some arrows and get away with it. And there's a little bit of a difference in the writing style, which makes this a more enjoyable read than most federal papers you're going to find.
And I think that's why these guys are Trump's lawyers. There's a big news story the other day. Prior to anything happening, the 5 lawyers quit the team or whatever, or were, I don't know that they quit. They just parted ways with Trump. And of course, it was like, you got legal. He's like, this is really devastating to Donald Trump. It's like, it's look, if you've got 12 lawyers in the hallway waiting to take this case, losing 5 of them isn't actually devastating at all, especially if they're not going to achieve what President Donald Trump wants out of this impeachment trial. And you have to remember that this is an opportunity for Trump to message to all of America in an official way when he's no longer official. And you have to take this the way that it wants to be taken. Now, I think maybe if Trump wanted to like present a bunch of evidence about Dominion or something like that, I could see why some lawyers would shy away from that. And that might have been the case. But I think as much as that may have been a factor in it, this sort of flair may have been a factor in it too. Trump says,
Right.
look, I don't want you to just I don't want just any brief. I want a brief that demolishes these morons.
The
Listen,
greatest brief.
this beautiful brief, flowery language, beautiful language.
People say they never saw anything like it.
Very
People say
good
they
words.
never saw a brief like that one.
I've been told many times that I have a special brain, a unique brain, very big, very beautiful brain, lots of folds, terrific words. The vocal centers of my brain are terrific, massive even. And I want that reflected in my brief. And by brief, I mean relating to the document. It can't be brief, at least 50 pages, maybe even 65. Can you do 65 pages? Like, I genuinely think that there's an element of the interview that Trump is doing with these lawyers. Like, you're going to fight my impeachment. We already know it's a foregone conclusion. I want you to sit there, and I do want you to take these people to task for what they're doing. And I think we're seeing that done in a professional way. It's restrained.
Yeah.
Like, if it's me, right? If it's me and I'm writing this brief on behalf of Trump, I'm calling all these people fat and ugly and all sorts of stuff. I'm the wrong guy.
You'd be talking about the gap between Stacey Abrams' front teeth. You'd be like,
the distance between what happened in reality on January 6th and what happened in the Democrats' brief is wider than the gap between Stacey Abrams' teeth. And let me tell you, you can fly a whole hot dog through that chasm.
It would take 33 minutes to walk from one tooth to the other.
Yeah. Her toothbrush can't be incited by the toothpaste because of how long it takes to cross the gap to the next tooth. Like, that would be me. I'd be so bad at this because if you give me unfettered license to insult the other party, my brief would be 200 pages of insults.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why we became lawyers, isn't it? It's like, okay, this way I can get my trolling out and get paid for it. Like, whoa.
Yeah. It's oh God. But yeah, I do think that actually played a factor into Trump's thing. He wanted lawyers to go ahead and be willing to put down on paper a little bit, a mild amount of inflammatory context. And I think he's got it here. So words do matter, and the words of President Trump's January 6th speech speak for themselves. President Trump did not direct anyone to commit lawless actions, and the claim that he could be responsible if a small group of criminals who had come to the Capitol of their own accord, armed and ready for a fight, completely misunderstood him, were so enamored with him and inspired by his words that they left his speech early and then walked a mile and a half away to imminently do the opposite of what he had just asked for is simply absurd. And that's a great sentence. It's entirely too long. It's what, 5 lines, 6 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines, 5 lines. Yeah, 5 lines.
But look at the next sentence. Look at the very next sentence.
The attack on the Capitol was horrific. They do this. They do this really well.
The really long sentence and the 6-word sentence.
Yes, and I learned it as a 5-word sentence in my 8th grade English class. That this was a crucial part of essay writing, and it's one of the only things that stuck with me from my high school and junior high English classes till now because it's so dang effective. They do this. The attack on the Capitol was horrific. They just summarized their entire premise and highlighted the lunacy of the previous premise in just a couple words. And they did it up before too. I meant to call it out, but they had a literal 5-word sentence in the first thing. They throw them in there. They're great flair because it causes a break in the whole narrative to just say, hey, pay attention to what we just said. What happened was horrifying. What they said happened is stupid. Mm-hmm. And it's great. Yeah. And then they punctuate it again, just in case they thought they were going to get back into the flow. Period.
Yeah, yeah. But, and this is great writing. This is very effective. I'm really impressed with Castor and Trump. I hope they present themselves in person as well as they do on paper because their writing is really exceptional.
Have you met any of any of these guys? Ever heard of them?
Yeah, well, one of them was over my house last month. We had a barbecue here in the middle of December. It was like a whole Christmas thing going on here in New Jersey.
Yeah.
No, how would I know Castor? What are you
I don't
asking
know.
me?
Ron Coleman lives like down the street from
Okay,
you. So
Ron Coleman. All right, that's like a whole Jew thing. We congregate in the same areas.
I
Okay,
thought
that's
that
number
was
one.
dangerous and you wanted to avoid that.
No, 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 no. This way, are you kidding? This way, when, this way, when like the when the Uber rights are, I can like I have shields. I got like my neighbors.
You're just throwing neighbors in front of you as you run away. No. Okay, I do have a legitimate question in regards to Orthodox Judaism
Go for it.
that I remembered. I was down in Atlanta for an event last year, and they have the big cemetery, the Memorial Cemetery there in Atlanta, that has the Civil War. It has like the Confederate burial and the monument to the Confederate soldiers there.
Yeah,
But they have like a section of
for Jews.
the yeah for Jews, and so I was curious if there like a specific like a burial ritual or something to do with the soil that is involved in that, or is that something else?
We we specifically cordon off our cemeteries that you'll have Jewish sections of a cemetery. In fact, yeah, there's I don't really know enough about the origin of why it is that it's like that, but that's a very well established old traditional rule going back thousands of years that
Okay,
Jews will be buried amongst other Jews. So
gotcha. Okay, I didn't know if it was something that like something with the conduct of the plants, or like maybe they don't use fertilizer or something. So I
no,
didn't
no, no,
know
no.
if it was related to sort of the an idea of like the kosher lifestyle or something like that.
No, there is like a reason behind it. It's not in general the customs around death, funeral, or even posts. Yeah, anything related to that topic are things that don't aren't really people deal with it when it comes up, and it's not like something like we study in Orthodox and yeshiva or something like that.
Sure.
No one ever learns that until they're actually in that situation. First time I ever learned any of these laws was my mother died. So that's when you're like a mourner. You come as a
Right.
mourner, you say Kaddish, which people have heard about, and there's certain things you're supposed to say and do as a mourner, and different rules and regulations. But we never study any of these until you're actually in the situation, and then you're taught that on the fly. As far as why we're buried specifically in Jewish, there are Jewish cemeteries, and they're pretty strict about not letting Christians in there, and Jews would make a big deal about only being buried in Jewish cemeteries. And I don't know what the origin of that is, but it's been like that for literally 3,000 years.
Can I
So
posthumously be converted?
no, no, you can be converted today, not after death. You can't. That doesn't.
It doesn't
It's
seem
got to be
fair to me.
something.
I want that exclusive burial. I want that premium real estate. No.
I don't know if it's even premium. It's just I don't know that it's any.
Look,
Yeah,
if I can't
but
be in there, then it is premium. I mean, that's the trick. That's how I see
no, but that's the
everything.
thing is like I can't be in like your cemetery
Well,
because
I'd
you
let
know
you
what I'm
in my
saying.
cemetery.
But yeah, okay. Well, first of all, you're saying that now. You're not there yet.
Yeah, that's right. I'll be dead in the ground. I'll be like, oh, these Jews are moving in now. This is
Uh,
terrible. I gotta get exhumed immediately.
you know, they'll drive the price up even higher, right? Whatever.
This reverse
So.
gentrification is not okay with me at all.
Yeah.
My
So.
grocery store is gonna change dramatically. No, okay, thank you for sharing, because I was curious about that, and it came up on a live stream the other day when I was like, oh yeah, there's a whole Jewish section of the cemetery, and I don't know anything about it.
Yeah. We don't have crosses. We'll never have a
Right.
cross. You'll never. That's the way you can tell a Jewish cemetery, really, from a
Yeah.
distance. Is if you look at a cemetery, unless it's what Arlington, that place where all the soldiers are buried. The only other place besides, and the only place you'll find a cemetery where there are absolutely no crosses at all is a Jewish cemetery. I guess maybe Muslims have a similar thing. I've never been to a Muslim cemetery. I don't know, but maybe they have a similar thing.
Yeah, come to think of it, I haven't been to a specifically Muslim cemetery either. So that's, yeah. Bad Vibe says, so there isn't juicy Walking Dead. Just kidding. No, there
Mm.
isn't. Okay. So let's get back to this document. Now that we've covered that weird subject. But as constitutional professors and experienced practitioners agree, and these footnotes are actually really good. I've been glossing over them, but the footnotes on this page go to Andrew Kopelman, who's a constitutional law professor at Northwestern, and Jeffrey Scott Shapiro, who is a D.C. Assistant Attorney General, who is a prosecutor who has prosecuted incitement cases. Both those guys say, nope, no incitement here. As they agree, the president didn't mention violence on Wednesday, much less provoke or incite it. The fact that the House managers found sheer deceptiveness necessary in the exercise of selectively parsing the words of the former president and quoting him out of context underscores the utter weakness of the House managers' factual and legal claims. This tact is reminiscent of Congressman Schiff's manufacturing of a fake conversation between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky. And these are
Zing!
great zings, and they're great calls to the Republicans. And they're giving, this is the thing, they're giving permission to their audience who are Republican senators. You don't have to buy into these lies. Like, you have enough cover to back out of this. And and they're doing a really good job of that. Truth also matters very much, but Speaker Pelosi and her allies perverted the truth. The day after the riot, sensing political opportunity, House leadership decided to forego focusing on the business of the nation and unifying a bitterly divided country to once again endeavor to score political points against Mr. Trump. First, in an attempt to usurp constitutional power that is not in any way hers, the Speaker demanded that Vice President Michael Pence or the White House cabinet invoke the 25th Amendment, threatening to launch an impeachment proceeding if they refused. 4 days later, on January 11th, an article of impeachment was introduced which charged President Trump with incitement of insurrection against the United States government and a lawless action at the Capitol. See House Resolution 24. The Speaker made good on her extortionate threat. And what do you think about that? Do you think that's an extortionate threat?
I think Nancy Pelosi is literally a lizard covered in human skin. I think she swallows like rodents. I think in those little tubs of ice cream, there's like actual like rodent flavored ice cream. I think that she's literally an evil creature. I think that we can see her skin molting off sometimes. Like,
yeah.
it's just like hanging down from her face, and that she needs to go back into whatever refrigerator thing that they have. I guess not, because lizard people need it warm. But yeah,
Right.
I think her children took 7 years to hatch, like all other snake people.
Do you have you ever seen Star Trek Insurrection? Are you a Star Trek fan at all?
I am a Star Trek fan.
Did you see Insurrection? I think it's the 8th movie, the one after First Contact. And they have that race that they like their skin is like sloughing down, and so they have a thing that pulls it from the back of their head, and like they all look like Joan Rivers.
I don't know what. No, I don't remember. I don't know why I don't remember that.
It wasn't one of the better movies. It was like First Contact was really good. Insurrection was kind of like, I like it, but it was kind of like, And then they went to Nemesis, which was the final movie, which is also a pretty good movie. And then they did the new ones.
These are not the remakes with
not the remakes. Not the remakes. These are still with Picard, Captain Picard and Data
so
and
I actually never it took me a while and very, very recent that I got into Next Generation Star Trek. I was always very bothered. I always thought Riker was like buffoon. I never had respect for him. Picard is like very respectable. Like there's something about him. He presents himself. He's like really respectable. Data, I was like, this is just a bad ripoff of Spock. I just never really got into it until very recently. Like I've been watching like Pluto TV. They have like Star Trek Next Generation. I'm like, you know what? This is like not bad. But but I never really got into. I never saw those movies.
Well, next time you watch Insurrection, and you see
lizard
like
people with their face molting.
Yeah, they're like face starts to sag, and they go in for a treatment because they're supposed to be like long-lived like Vulcans or whatever, but they're for whatever something like happened to them, and so they go in for stretchings. Look They're like
Oh, so they
scalps.
actually had the sound of like rubber being pulled, like
They have
like that.
they have something like that, and one of them, like when he gets stretched, he actually like fracture, like it
It
rips,
rips.
it
Yeah.
rips, and he's like, "Oh no!" And it's oh god, it's good.
Are you
Uh,
old enough to remember V? Did you ever see V?
V for Vendetta.
No, not V Vendetta. That like the TV series V, which is about these
Oh
reptilians who come down like in
no,
human form.
no, I
Yeah.
never watched it. I've heard of it, but I didn't
Yeah.
watch it.
Well, that was Nancy. That was Nancy's forebears right there. So
Accountability does matter, according to the White House managers, unless you are a Democrat. While
yeah.
fixating on words and sentences taken out of context, the House managers ignore the many reckless statements made by their Democrat colleagues in the House and Senate. Merely by way of example, one need only search media reports to be reminded of Speaker Pelosi's 2018 hopeful comment when disagreeing with a policy. Quote, I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country. Maybe there will be. And just last summer, when sustained violent riots were decimating our cities and local businesses, Representative Anya Presley went on national TV and said, quote, there needs to be unrest in the streets. They also ignore the sheer hypocrisy of their House leaders' 4+ year quest to remove President Trump from office. After the article was introduced, Speaker Pelosi again gave Vice President Pence an ultimatum. Either he invokes the 25th Amendment within 24 hours or the impeachment proceedings would proceed. Vice President Pence responded in a letter to Speaker Pelosi the following day, stating that he would not allow her to usurp constitutional authority that is not hers and extort him, and by extension the nation, to invoke the 25th Amendment because he believed to do so would not, quote, be in the best interest of our nation or consistent with our Constitution. Vice President Pence also noted that Speaker Pelosi was being hypocritical, as she had previously stated in that in utilizing the 25th Amendment, quote, Pelosi, we must be very respectful of not making a judgment on the basis of a comment or behavior that we don't like, but rather must base such a decision on a medical decision. And again, pointing out hypocrisy is great in this context because it's all about giving the Republicans in the room ammo to say, this is stupid. We don't need to deal with it.
Hey, you preach this way. You get them to sort of circle back to their base. So, and this is the age of circling back. So
Right. Right.
we have another 3 years and 11 months of circling back.
We have another
So
3 years and 11 months of this document. I don't think we're going to get through it. We're on page 16 of 78. But that's okay. We'll go a little bit longer.
yeah,
We'll go a little bit longer and then
I'll outlast you. I can hold my alcohol. I'll outlast you.
I'm not worried about holding my alcohol. Like, listen, you can drink me under the table and I'll be just fine. All right, now we're on to the argument section. What do you think about the summary of facts section? You know what I noticed in the summary of facts section, which is really interesting? So they call their summary of facts section facts relevant to the impeachment, right? You notice what they don't talk about. I mean, they talk about it at the beginning a little bit, but they barely talk at all about the Capitol riot and the January 6th day. It's this nice device in writing where they say there are no facts relevant to the impeachment, but there's a bunch of facts out here that are irrelevant that the Democrats are focused on. So why don't we just go ahead and focus on some other things too and point out hypocrisy? But
facts relevant to the impeachment is they've been trying to do impeachment for 4 years and they've tried it 9 times. Facts relevant are that it's all about a political game and that this is all about Nancy Pelosi threatening and trying to get her way, even though she's been doing worse. And facts and accountability don't matter except to Democrats. I can't believe that when I read through this, I didn't notice that because that's unless you're a Democrat. They literally are just like wham, wham, wham. They had so much fun writing this. I'm almost jealous they got paid for this. They had so much fun writing this, and they did a bang up job without getting. My problem in writing something like this is I would what you would say. It would end up being like instead of this being brought down in like 12 pages, 13 pages, I would want to go on for like 40 pages with like more examples of like their hypocrisy. And the truth is that would be too much. This is what they did here. I think it's a good length. and I think that they did a phenomenal job of bringing this down. I'm telling you, I don't know these people. I never had them over for barbecue yet, even though I might have told some people in the past that I have. But
I invite them all to my house for barbecue. They're
okay,
welcome.
seriously, I'm not even making a joke now when I about to tell you, and you're gonna think I'm a lunatic. I probably shouldn't admit this publicly.
You should definitely do
You-
it.
a couple days ago on my channel, for those of you who are like new subscribers, I put out a video that you should check out after I'm done here with Nick, where I actually gave, I wrote what my speech would be if I was Trump's counsel opening up defense
Oh yeah, yeah,
for,
yeah. I
and
saw
it,
I didn't watch that video. I watched your video on Robin Hood, which was very good, by the way. But
thank you.
but I didn't watch that particular video yet. But I saw
So,
it. I
and
saw the announcement.
after I wrote that speech, and I think I'm really proud of that speech. It's not long. It's like a 10-minute video, and in that speech, which I bring up the dancing plague and also and things that probably most people never heard of before, and I tie it all together in a neat bow as to this hypocrisy here. And I took that speech and I sent it to Mr. Castor, and I say, I offer you this as my tribute to the greatest president of my lifetime. I don't think, I said, not to question your talents or abilities. You want to borrow what I have here, by all means, I would be privileged to serve this up as a tribute to a man, as an appreciation for his last 4 years of service for our country. So now, so if he mentions the St. Vitus dance or the dancing plague, you will know that he got my email, he saw my video, and that's where it came from. And that's all. That'd be enough, just for like the handful of us who know that video. And now your people here are going to check it out. So this way you'll see I'm not making it up. Tomorrow when he goes out there and he opens and he mentions the St. Vitus dance or the black or the dancing plague, just think, wow, Joni Erin, I'm changing the world one step at a time, changing
Look,
the world.
look, Castor and Schoen or whatever. I'm not gonna spend time sending you a video. You don't need to see a video from me. What I am gonna do is I'm gonna invite you over for some kosher barbecue here at my house. Because they clearly one of them is Orthodox or
So,
at least Sabbath observing, right?
really?
Because
Is that true?
yeah, they requested and received permission that any trial would stop on Friday at 5 p.m. and resume on Sunday at 2 p.m. or something like
Oh,
that.
wow.
So
Wow.
Sabbath
That's got to
observing.
be Shown. Shown is much more of a Jewish name than Castor.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I figured too. But I'm just saying I will invite them over. We'll do whatever it takes. Come to my house and hang out. We'll skeet shoot pictures of AOC or whatever, and we'll have a barbecue. It'll be great.
that's awesome. I'm sure he'll take it up on it.
I'm guessing so. They'll be on the next plane to Minnesota. I'll pick you up at the airport. It's fine. You don't want to drive out here by yourself. Okay. So on to the argument section. The Senate lacks the constitutional jurisdiction to conduct an impeachment trial of a former president. And this again, I've maintained that ever since Rand Paul's vote, that was their signal. Like, here you go, Trump lawyers, just do this. Oh,
they basically spelled out for them. They're like, this is the argument you should pound home. This is what you start with. This is what you finish with, and this is really all you need to win. And
it's like
any good lawyer.
It's like if you're at your first hearing, right? And the judge says, well, did you think about this? It's like, oh shit, maybe I should. That's what happened right there. Like, okay, I'm gonna go back and brief this.
It sounds like you were reading that to me from your memoirs. Like that definitely happened to you.
No. Not in that way. It's happened later where like I motioned for dismissal and the court granted it. And like they kind of cursory looked at my argument and then made a better one. I was like, oh, okay. Thanks, Judge.
Thank you.
That was helpful. No, I was gonna ask you before we moved on, and I forgot. If you were Trump's lawyer, what would you charge for this? Because these guys have to be charging a boatload of money. I would think this is a novel thing, right? Impeachment defense.
I'm sure they're on an hourly. I mean,
Yeah, and
the,
it's got to
I'd be
be.
surprised. I would think that they're probably like 1,200 an hour or something like that.
You think that's it? I mean, NRA lawyers cost more than that.
Really? What do NRA go for?
Well, there was a big scandal because the NRA lawyer in Dallas was charging like $1,900 an hour or something like that.
Really?
Yeah, it was a big news story. He was charging like 3 times the local highest rate or something.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I was thinking,
I thought. Look, I mean, I never really check out like what real big fish charge. Um,
you've got
because
a
I
billionaire
think what I
client.
charge is obscene. Like I couldn't afford to pay me what I charge.
Yeah, I don't think any lawyer can afford to pay themselves.
Right. So, um, yeah, but like these corporate attorneys, I know that they all charge like at least a grand. Like the partners are charging like a grand per hour, 1,200 per hour. So that's why I'm assuming it's somewhere in that ballpark. I don't think they charge more because it's an impeachment. I think for them is actually they know that this becomes a feather in their cap, and especially if you're the defense counsel here, where you're like, okay, I got to sort of really drop the ball to lose this. This is a great opportunity for them because it's almost like
Yeah,
you just
but
got to hold serve.
look, when you're pitching to the client, you don't pitch it as a great opportunity, right? You're like, look at all these other lawyers you
Oh
had.
yeah,
They're getting torn up by the media. They're going after their licenses. We're really putting our necks out for you, Mr. President. That'll be 2,000 an hour.
no. If you're Castor or any of these other 12 attorneys who he's hired, your argument is, how have your previous lawyers been holding up for you so far? How have they been doing for you for the last couple months? I haven't really been following the news. Have they been winning? Have they been winning a lot of cases recently?
Yeah.
Because I mean, Giuliani, he seemed okay. He was actually better when I watched him. He was better than I anticipated him being in front of in all his hearings, as far as him sounding, um, being able to make his arguments sound legitimate. And
Oh, man, I thought his Pennsylvania hearing was an absolute disaster.
I was talking. I thought that's in what you call it. Wait, his Pennsylvania hearing.
The election lawsuit where it was Trump versus Bookvar, and he came in.
Oh,
Now,
I didn't see that. No, I didn't
okay,
see that.
that one was pretty bad.
I'm talking about the way he conducted himself in front of like the Georgia Congress there. I
Oh,
thought
okay,
that,
yeah, those hearings, I think he did better
yeah.
than he did at that and there's a lot of reasons why that Pennsylvania hearing was probably bad. I mean, he was hired like that morning, or he came in that morning to do the argument,
Okay.
and it wasn't his brief and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, that one was rough.
Was it?
That
That's
was
what I'm
not
saying
a
is like the track record of production that Trump has gotten. It seems like it's a pretty easy pitch to offer him that he needs to have a change of pace here. They're
yeah.
it's trying to bring in Mariano or something. You know,
Okay,
from
let's okay, here we
come
go.
back to.
Yeah, back to it. The Constitution of the United States bifurcates the power of impeachment and addresses the issue in 4 places. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5. I'm not going to read these constitutional provisions, guys.
Yeah, that's funny.
We've read them a million times. The text and structure of the articles discussing impeachment do not grant to the Senate the authority over a former president. As is evident from our Constitution's plain text, Article 2 limits impeachment to current officials. Quote, the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. As Alexis de Tocqueville wrote, impeachment was designed to deprive a political actor, quote, of the authority he has used to amiss. In this instance, however, the Senate is being asked to do something patently ridiculous. Try a private citizen in a process that is designed to remove him from an office that he no longer holds. The impeachment of a former president, a private citizen, constitutes an illegal bill of attainder. This section gets a little bit heady, I think, like in into the weeds of law. And I always think about it because I used to listen to talk radio a lot more, and I used to listen to Jason Lewis from time to time because he would be on during my drive home from work, and he would talk about bill of attainders all the time. Everything was a bill of attainder to Jason Lewis. But yeah, it's basically the idea of a legislature going in and saying something that is already happening is illegal and they need to be punished for their prior acts.
Mhm.
which is
Is that
interesting.
like a due process or is it ex post facto thing? I think
It's
it's
ex
really
post
like a due
facto.
process. You think it's ex post facto, not like a due process?
That's how I always look at it. But let's see how Schoen describes it, because and
All right.
Castor and Schoen here, they say an impeachment trial of Mr. Trump held before the Senate would be nothing more nor less than a trial of a private citizen by a legislative body. An impeachment trial by the Senate of a private citizen violates Article 1, Section 9 of the U.S. Constitution, which states that no bill of attainder shall be passed. The bill of attainder, as this clause is known, prohibits Congress from enacting, quote, a law that legislatively determines guilt and inflicts punishment upon an identifiable individual without provision of the protections of a judicial trial. Simply put, a bill of attainder is a legislative act which inflicts punishment without a judicial trial. The distinguishing characteristic of a bill of attainder is the substitution of legislative determination of guilt and legislative imposition of punishment for judicial finding and sentence. Okay, so I always think of it as ex post facto, because you have an identified target and an identified act, and then you go ahead and make that act illegal and then punish them
Right.
for it. So to me, it comes across that way, but I think it is also very much a due process violation, because it's saying you're not entitled to a judgment on the merits. We're going to legislatively determine what you're doing to be illegal and then make it so.
So I think it actually breaks down the difference between ex post facto and lack of due process when you really think about it. And I only had this insight just now as you were talking, is that the real distinction is whether the focus is on the man or on the action. So bill of attainder sounds to me, the lack of due process is you're focusing on this individual's lack of protection under constitutional law, that he has due process and the right to defend himself and all the other rights that we associate with the Bill of Rights, etc. That's a focus on the person.
Right.
And I think that's where bill, as opposed to ex post facto, is the actions that the person took. Were those actions deemed legal or illegal at the moment that they took them? Not the
Okay.
person, but the action. That's the fixation on the action. So, or in Talmud, we would say the difference between the chayfetz and the gaber, the item versus the man. So too here, I think that's the difference between due process and the issue with respect to due process versus ex post facto. So over here, when bill of attainder, the way they're explaining it, I think they're actually focusing on the due process element of it. They're saying that he, as a person, has a right to not be subject to him being guilty, as opposed to this action being guilty, but him being guilty, which is
Okay.
to me a due process. That's
I
just my
uh
read on it.
I accept your argument and agree.
Yeah, cool.
I think you made the better point. So good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
That'll be, I'm going to charge you $400 an hour for that. The Bill of Attainder clause and the separation of powers doctrine generally reflect the framers' concern that trial by a legislature lacks the safeguards necessary to prevent the abuse of power. As the Supreme Court explained in U.S. v. Brown, the best available evidence, the writings of the architects of our constitutional system, indicate that the Bill of Attainder clause was intended not as a narrow, technical, and therefore soon to be outmoded prohibition, but rather as an implementation of the separation of powers, a general safeguard against legislative exercise of the judicial function, or more simply, trial by legislature. The Bill of Attainder reflected the framers' belief that the legislative branch is not so well suited as politically independent judges and juries. Now, this is weird, though, because if, playing devil's advocate here, if we take their argument, the impeachment is literally a trial by the legislature. I mean, that's what it is. So,
Yeah.
posing that the impeachment is an impermissible bill of attainder because it's an act of the legislature as opposed to the judiciary, when it is literally an act of the legislature and is prescribed by the Constitution, I don't know if that's the most persuasive argument for me.
But I think the point that they're making is the Constitution, the doorway to use this vehicle is something that the Constitution has to specify. Otherwise, the general rule is, because let's think about what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, like, our Constitution is silent on the matter as to whether or not a former president can be impeached. There's nothing really saying it. Because if you're on the Democratic side, you can say, well, why is there two things? There's two elements: there's removal and permanent can never come back.
Oh, I
On the
see what you're
Republican
saying
side,
here. Yeah.
on the Republican side, you're sort of left with this perspective of, unless you have both, you have nothing. So which is the right way to read it? Well, I think that they're trying to set up here that when it's because of this whole issue of a bill of attainder, and they're not supposed to have this trial by you're not supposed to have this trial by legislature, but that's reserved specifically for the judiciary. So you can't just read this into the Constitution unless the Constitution is very specific in allowing for this type of trial by legislature.
I see
Because
my
normal
problem.
legislature has no judicial power. You want to give a judicial power, then it has to be specific here in the Constitution. Otherwise, they don't have that power.
I
So,
I see my problem here, and it's that I haven't read the first line of the next paragraph.
oh, okay.
It's when the Senate undertakes an impeachment trial of a private citizen, it is acting as a judge and jury rather than a legislative body. So this is feeding into what you were just saying this basically, that they're making the distinguishment between they're not impeaching a president of the United States, they're impeaching a private citizen, which is one of the overall thrusts of their argument. And
Mm-hmm.
they didn't in those first two paragraphs solidify that, and it happens here. They're saying that they're reminding Congress, hey, he's not the president. You can't
Right.
impeach this guy. If you do impeach this guy, it's a bill of attainder against a private citizen, and that's impermissible. That's what I
Right.
wasn't putting together. I
Yeah.
blame the double shot of liquor.
You're doing fine. It's 240 and a double shot of liquor, or even by you 140. We give you a pass on that. Don't worry.
And this is exactly the type of situation that the Bill of Attainder was meant to preclude. It is clear that disqualification from holding future office is a kind of punishment that is subject to the constitutional inhibition against the passage of bills of attainder, under which general designation bills of pains and penalties are included. In Cummings, Ex parte Garland, and Brown, the Supreme Court thrice struck down provisions that precluded support of the South or support of communism from holding certain jobs as being in violation of this prohibition. Thus, the impeachment of a private citizen in order to disqualify them from holding office is an unconstitutional act constituting a bill of attainder. I like that unconstitutional constituting little dichotomy there. That was good.
Yeah, it is good.
Moreover, this is the exact type of situation in which the fear would be great that some members of the Senate might be susceptible to acting in the haste the House did when it rushed through the articles of impeachment in less than 48 hours, i.e., acting hastily simply to appease the popular clamor of their political base. As Chief Justice Marshall warned in Fletcher versus Peck, it is not to be disguised that the framers of the Constitution viewed, with some apprehension, the violent acts which might grow out of the feelings of the moment, and that the people of the United States, in adopting that instrument, have manifested a determination to shield themselves and their property from the effects of those sudden and strong passions to which men are exposed. The restrictions on the legislative power of the states are obviously founded in this sentiment, and the Constitution of the United States contains what may be deemed a Bill of Rights for the people of each state. No state shall pass any bill of attainder. In this form, the power of the legislature over the lives and fortunes of individuals is expressly restrained. Good quote. Good
Very
quote
good
on
quote.
that.
Right, spot on.
But yeah, so that's the idea, is that he is a private citizen. So to bring a legislative trial against him would be impermissible. Now, I think we should stop reading the document here
Okay.
and do chats in a minute. But I wanted to get your thoughts on, I guess, this idea of, is he sitting as president? Is he a private individual? What do we glean about John Roberts not taking the case? And do we think that he will get a hearing in front of the whole Senate or just a part of the Senate?
When you say hearing, okay, so you asked me a few questions there. Let's break them down one by
Yes.
one.
Oh, this isn't a deposition. You got to.
Okay, yeah, I do think there's a certain almost admission from the Supreme Court by John Roberts passing on coming in here. It's almost an admission from the Supreme Court that they don't think that this is that he's a president. They're not treating him like he's a president, and that almost invalidates the entire process before it even begins.
Right.
It's basically saying we're not judging a sitting president. Well, if he's not a sitting president, you're not judging a sitting president. Well, why? What is the impeachment hearing for? So it to me, that's the Supreme Court, and not just the Supreme Court, but milk toast John Roberts, who's pretty much riding the Democrats' side for the last half dozen years. So that sounds to me like he doesn't think it's really a valid impeachment.
I wish
No
he
one's
would
asked the
come out.
Supreme Court, which I don't know why no one's asked the Supreme Court with their opinion on it, like to give a decision. You would think Trump would have actually brought this before the Supreme Court and tried to get this stopped as being like a complete waste and have them weigh in and say Congress has no right to hear this as an impeachment.
Yeah, I would have framed that case as Donald Trump suing.
The United
Uh,
States.
no, wouldn't he ask for a writ of mandamus against Roberts? Right, like
Why is it against Roberts?
mandamus Roberts to demand that he sit for the impeachment trial.
Oh, that's what you're saying. That to compel him. Are you saying compel Roberts?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's what anyone would want. Anyone, yeah, I really want Roberts to sit for this trial. No, I'm
No,
saying like he could have started in theory. He could have brought in action to say that this entire that's my bell going off. Sorry.
that's got to be
Um,
irritating as hell.
Let me tell you something. It's really freaky in the middle of the night. Like I'm pretty sound sleeper, and my wife will tell you that's because I snore so loudly that I can't hear any other noises that are if
Right.
there's an earthquake.
You've generated your own healthy level of white noise to
But
drown out the rest of the
she's
world.
totally making that up. I'm pretty sure I've never snored in my life. But um yeah, I was saying that like I wonder if he could bring a proceeding to stop this impeachment bring up seen for court saying that this impeachment is illegal and accordingly that this impeachment should not be allowed to proceed. I can't even begin to imagine where he would file such a thing and who he would be
I
suing.
I think I think the court would refuse to hear it. I think what they would have to do is wait for the impeachment to happen, and he would have to sue over an impermissible deprivation of his rights following the impeachment.
Yeah, but okay, that I think would be a terrible strategy because
I think it's
once it's
terrible
passed
too.
by majority, once it's passed by 2/3 of Congress, 2/3 of the Senate, that they're going to overturn it. They'll be like, no, that's practically a bill being. This is a bill being written. Can they weigh in on a bill on the passage of a bill? Can the court weigh in about the constitutionality of a bill that's being brought before Congress?
I think they would have to. I think the reason I derive that is I think that all impeachment cases that are published from the Supreme Court involve post impeachment remedy.
Oh, you know what? You're making a fair point because really, this is really this thing about it. This article of impeachment is a bill. So the same
Yeah.
way any other bill. So once the bill is passed, then you have to say the bill is unconstitutional. So I guess in theory, if the Senate would rule against Trump, and it would pass there, then he could come and argue before the court that it's unconstitutional bill that's passed.
I don't think it's the way it should be. I just think that's the way the court would take it. Is that look, we're not gonna basically
It's not right.
this issue isn't ripe until
Yeah.
you've actually been deprived of a right. We're not going to say because it's very dangerous, I think, for the court in a separation of powers views to step in and say you can't impeach here. Well, I mean, of course they can impeach. Like, of course
Right.
they can. But if Roberts doesn't sit and the Senate does go ahead and vote on Trump and deprive him of his rights, he now has a valid claim before the court that says, no, 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 this impeachment was entirely improper. And I'm going to petition the court to re-implement my rights. I do think that if he were trying to do it prior to the impeachment, he would have to do it as a sort of mandamus action. But I think they would have had to, the defense would have had to request John Roberts' presence first.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing that I'm confused about, and I haven't read anything about this. I didn't know if you had. Do we actually have any indication that John Roberts was invited to preside over this impeachment?
So there's I think it's almost like he has a right to it. I don't know. So you asked me the procedural story, like how does it happen that he gets invited, as opposed to, um, okay, so when he came to the last one, okay, the first
Yeah,
impeachment in 2019, is there formal paperwork that has to be filed to notify him about the impeachment in order for him to come there,
that's what I
and then
don't
he's
know.
obligated to come?
Like I would expect
Who
that what
does knows?
happened.
Who would know this? Why would anyone know this information?
Yeah, because it's so rare that I don't know that there's a process, but I would assume the Senate, like to me, if I'm the Senate and I hold impeachments, and the Constitution says that the you know Chief Justice shall preside over impeachment of a president. Like if I'm Mitch McConnell in 2019, 2020, I go ahead and once the Senate, the House papers are delivered to the Senate and the impeachment is formalized, I go ahead and send a copy of those letters of impeachment to John Roberts, along with a letter formally requesting his presence at the upcoming trial when it's scheduled. Like that's in my brain, that's how it works. I don't know if that's actually how it works, but to me, there would be a request because that's not his house, right? His house is the judicial branch,
Right.
and so you're inviting him in to come preside over the Senate. Either Mitch McConnell would do it at the time, or Mike
So you're saying
Pence.
who gives the keys to Roberts? Like who?
Right.
Like how is that passage of the keys that
It
from I
feels like
guess really from Pence to Roberts for the
yeah.
impeachment trial,
I guess
right?
Pence, either the Senate Majority Leader or the president of the Senate, or maybe the president pro tempore. But one of those people, in my opinion, should be asking the Chief Justice to come preside. And I don't know if that's true. So I'm just confused over what happened here because it like Roberts is either signaling that he thinks this isn't constitutional because they asked him and he said no, or no one asked John Roberts and he's not signaling anything and the Democrats are pulling a boneheaded move. I don't know
Well,
which
unless
one.
the media is pulling its typical to spread whatever lies come through its head. Supposedly, I did read when Pat Leahy was assigned to this that Roberts had refused to take part in it.
Yeah, and I don't know what that actually means because the only things I ever saw from Roberts were like Rand Paul saying John Roberts privately said he wouldn't take part in it, but he didn't issue a statement, which I think is very beta behavior on behalf of John Roberts. Like
If there was
just issue a statement.
if nature did not allow for beta behavior, then John Roberts would have to be a paraplegic because everything he does, everything is the most beta guy in the world.
Yeah, and it would have just been. I think he should have sent out a statement that says, "The Supreme Court does not believe that Donald Trump is the sitting president, and therefore he will not preside." That's all they had to say, and that is a huge dog whistle right there to say this is not acceptable.
Right, which the Democrats sort of squirm away from, and they say like, no, because he's not a sitting president, so it's his way of actually snubbing Trump to say, "Ha ha, you're not a president." I think that's how they would look at it. They always look at the glass half empty, and they say, "You see, even John Roberts is mocking Trump that he's not a president anymore, and that he's not going to have a Supreme Court justice presiding over his impeachment."
I think they would
So,
take it that way too, but I think it would also bolster Trump's ammunition on a post impeachment remedy.
no, that's fair.
I do think
That's
it
fair.
would have been funny if he would have demanded a writ of mandamus to the Supreme
Well, if
Court.
you think about it, whatever limited amount of judiciary is involved in the impeachment proceeding has been stripped away by having Pat Leahy. Or is Leahy still doing it, or is someone else because Leahy was sick? I
Yeah, I
heard.
think Leahy's still doing it.
Is he? Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Uh,
No one wishes ill on the man.
no, I don't wish ill on him. I just wish he'd retire.
Well, he's one of the better ones, I would think, right? Compared to like, let me ask you this: so who would you prefer, Leahy or Romney?
At least I know. At least I know Leahy stands by his party.
Yeah,
So,
you can admire, you can respect that.
yeah.
You can respect.
All right, let's do the chats and then we'll wrap up because
Okay.
it's getting pretty late. And then
Yeah.
I'll probably go through the rest of this tomorrow.
I feel
Which
so guilty. I feel so guilty because everyone should know when I contacted Nick about doing this. Okay, so I said we're gonna have a good time. We're gonna go through it, and we're like whatever. We're gonna plow right through. And he's like, "This never works when I have someone on. It takes so much longer. I can't do it." I'm like, "No, dude, we're gonna plow through. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good." It's like I got up to like page 6. I'm like,
no,
"Oh,
we
jeez."
made it to 20 of 78. It's fine. 17
Yeah.
by the PDF numbers because we skipped the first 3 pages of table of contents in the intro page. But no, it's fine because I very much enjoy the conversation though. It's
Yeah.
just two different things. And
Right.
I could have done the we'll read through it and then briefly discuss and then read through. But I much prefer the engaging conversation when I have a guest. So
I
I
actually really was hoping that we would get to like the legal argument. I want to like go through with you like the strength of the legal argument. Like I had this whole vision for what I was going to do with you, and it's ended up being like just two guys just joking around and like talking like throwing in some law here and there.
that's
But I actually
life.
really want to like debate with you like how good is this argument? Like if I was sitting here from the Democrat side and they come up with this argument where they say over here on page whatever, give me a heading here, but like, if they come up here and they say that more recent that the state courts have rejected claims similar to these, and then I want to like break them down with someone. Like I was sort of like felt like that's like,
Well,
is this a strong enough argument to work or not?
we could do that still, just not tonight.
You want to do it tomorrow? I'll be back.
Let's
If you're challenging me, if you're daring me, I'm back. What do I care?
yeah, I mean, yeah, let's talk about it. If not tomorrow, then like Wednesday. One of the two. I mean, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, for
We'll figure it
sure.
out. I do
For
want to
sure.
notice that the chat has been going for a very long time with all sorts of AOC stuff. AOC killed Screech. AOC bought all the toilet paper. AOC is Spartacus. AOC steps on worms in the rain. AOC ruined Cyberpunk. AOC was a sniper on the grassy knoll. Michael Myers is AOC's brother. I don't know what started this, but I love it. I love it. Um,
She's a
okay,
professional whiner. She gets paid literally to just like stamp her feet and be so upset. This is just an outrage as to what's happening here. And that's
the
all she does. Then,
the C
mm.
is the C is a hard C and it stands for Karen.
It's JOC, right? Justio Ocasio
I saw
JOC.
Alexandria Ocasio
Ocasio
Smollett.
Smollett.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what everyone was saying. But I was like, no, AOC to JOC. It's like so much easier. It works so
yeah,
much.
I like it.
All right.
All right, let's do these chats. Mario Carter says, "Why is winter Joe's favorite season? It's the only time of year under 18." He means Joe Biden, by the way, not you. Just so you know.
I'm like, what the heck?
Uh,
My dad's watching this.
Fuck Super Chat says, "Hey Joe, are you familiar with the Southern District of New York? And if so, can you explain why does it have such a bad reputation? As I am from Robert Barnes's channel, and is it the worst court?" Can you even answer this question, like ethically? uh, you can draw a negative inference from Joe's refusal to answer the question. Um,
There are a lot of very intelligent judges in the Southern District. Really, everyone's thinking like I'm being sarcastic. I'm not. There are a lot of very intelligent judges in the Southern District of New York. I do practice sometimes, too often in the Southern District of New York, and I really, yeah, I don't. There, a lot of cases come there because this is like the busy that covers New York City. Southern District of New York governs New York City, and anytime anything is related to New York City, it comes through there. I don't know that they're any better or worse than anyone else. It's one of the most prestigious courts to be assigned to because you know that that's where all the action is. So anything having to do with Wall Street, anything having to do with anything big in New York, it's going to come through the Southern District of New York. And there are a lot of really brilliant judges there. And that's, and I have to practice there sometimes.
Very good. Okay. F Super Chat says, "Hey Joe, have you seen how the FBI screwed up so bad by having a Photoshop picture in the complaint for McCreary indictment? The picture is a portrait of a giant naked man, penis flops out on a portrait in the Capitol building. Also, donate through Streamlabs." Did you see that?
No,
Okay, so
no.
one of the Capitol rioters, McCreary, who is next to the QAnon shaman, in his criminal complaint by the FBI, has someone photoshopped into the background on one of the pictures on the wall of the Capitol building this meme of this really like half muscular, half flabby black guy who's naked and squatting down.
Nice.
And they photoshopped it in the background. And so they grabbed the photo of this guy at the Capitol, and they must have just gone online and grabbed it from somewhere. And so they put that in their complaint. And all I'm thinking is, oh my God, file an immediate motion to dismiss. They use
Yeah. I think I saw this. This is like when somebody in the background. There's a photo on the wall.
yeah, it's a painting that
It's
would
like
be on
supposed to
the
be like
wall.
a photo on the wall of the Capitol, which is like basically like a totally fake picture or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's a picture that's there, and someone photoshopped this picture over it, right? I would be
No.
immediately filing for a
Well, you don't
motion to
bring a motion to
dismiss.
dismiss. You just bring this up and you say, this is how sloppy they are, that they think this is their evidence. This is their evidence. It's a clearly Photoshopped thing. I would move to
Yeah.
dismiss, use that to basically expose what garbage arguments they're presenting and what a joke this whole thing is.
No,
Why give it a second back?
I'd move to dismiss because so I had a case which was dismissed in large part because the prosecutors this is a case where someone allegedly posted a threat of violence online.
Mhm.
And the prosecutors had my client delete the threat before they hired me. They had my client delete the threat by threatening him with further charges. And
Wait, this case with the photo. I'm sorry to cut you off. I
yeah,
just want to make sure I'm clear. This is related to the impeachment or to an individual who's being
no,
charged
an individual
with breaching.
charged with breaching the
Oh
Capitol
yeah,
building.
then I agree with you. Yeah, then it
Yeah.
was dismissed. Yeah,
Okay,
for
yeah,
sure.
this
For
is a
sure, it was
criminal. This is
dismissed.
a
Yeah.
criminal complaint, and so
Oh, okay.
it's
Then it was
like
dismissed.
I would hammer them and be like, motion to dismiss. Clearly a doctored photo because I don't
Yeah.
think there's a giant naked black man portrait on the wall of the Capitol building, but
Yeah.
maybe they outsourced the
Yes.
interior design to AOC, so there could be one.
All right. That was my 3 a.m. double shot moment there. Sorry
Yes.
about that. Okay.
Mario Carter 13 says, in 4 years, the Democrats have somehow managed to turn the first black president into a complete afterthought. Obama has been reduced to the predecessor of the most notable president in modern history, and the deadweight dragging down Biden's popularity. Damn. Bathhouse Fauci says, the rumors about me are false. Being a man of science, I only went to the gay bathhouse to study the effects of AIDS. Being surrounded by meaty, juicy dong was just a regular coincidence, and I in no way sucked out samples for analysis in the lab. Come on. Did he?
Yeah, that's my bell. Basically, that's like my bell's going off. It's trying to censor you. I think.
Is there yeah, they were trying to bleep the words. Is there
Yeah.
an allegation that Fauci went to a bathhouse? Is that something that
I have. I'm going to shock you by telling you I really haven't been following Fauci's sexual proclivities.
me
So
either?
like, yeah, he's a slightly weird looking dude. I
Uh,
wouldn't really speculate.
these names, Clitoris Destroyer, bringing up the class of the stream, says, shout out to all my skin jobs in the chat. Hey, Nick, how much you want to bet there's going to be a 1/6 Memorial Day next year and every year after that? The DC photo op was another 9/11 after all.
Ooh, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. I
I
really
think
do.
it's a strong possibility.
Flags are definitely going to half-mast, but we'll see if they go ahead and make it a Memorial Day. Edris Rex says, Joe, how do Polish people hold their alcohol? In both hands. That's the answer.
Yeah.
Shadows King 101 says, not going to lie, I wasn't going to sub to Joe, but then I learned that he hated the Polish. Bad Dragonite says, Trump's legal team should just call all Dems and Rhinos gay boys. Yes, they should. Echoing the prophet, Christopher Hook. Wesley Reed says, is Good Logic going to be a monthly guest? Because that's an idea I can get behind and push down the stairs. Glad to see Joe on the show again. I don't know. Monthly, semi-monthly. I'm happy to have him on all the time.
Me too.
Stanley Duncan, welcome. Thank you for the donation. Kyle J says, no rush at all. What is your perspective about Chief Justice Roberts not deciding to preside over the case? Apparently, we just discussed this. Cars in Depth says, Joe, Meal Mart, A&H, or Jack's Hot Dogs?
Meal Mart.
Meal Mart hot dog. Is it a good hot dog?
It's kosher.
That's not an answer to the question.
I don't A&H or what? I never had the other one.
Jax. I don't know.
Yeah, I never had that.
I've only ever heard of Hebrew National.
Yeah, Hebrew National isn't even kosher. That's the real. I
It's
mean, I should.
not?
Yeah. I
What's
mean,
the
okay, but most Orthodox Jews, I mean, I don't want them to get me on libel defamation here, so I'm going to clarify that many Orthodox Jews do not trust the kashrus of Hebrew National.
Okay, very, very well articulated. F name L
Mhm.
name says they don't care if he's convicted. They aren't afraid of him. They fear us. This is about forcing him to attack us. It could be. Viden the Cold One says, I order you to check out Joe. Look for Good Logic on YouTube. Gendo S3S2K. AOC like Brian Williams. I was there. Polyfrog64, thanks for the donations. Peter Pete says, if they are scared Trump will rerun and really destroy all parties, they're trying to prevent him from returning and opening up over government corruption. Maybe. Look, if not to put a damper on things, but if Trump was going to open up over government corruption, I was hoping he would have done it sooner. Than he's done it so far.
Yeah, yeah, he had a lot of opportunity when he actually was, I don't know, president,
Yeah.
to like make things public. A few things that are disappointing about the last couple of months. I have theories. Next time I'm back, whether it's tomorrow, next couple of days, or whatever, I have a lot of theories as to what happened over the last couple of days, as to why it is that certain things happened from Trump that really were disappointing with the pardons, with everything. I got a lot of thoughts on that.
Yeah. I'd love to talk about him. That'll be good. Liberty or Death says holding President Trump liable for what happened at the Capitol is like prosecuting J.D. Salinger for the murder of John Lennon. Damn. Angry Baneling says, Nick, what is temporal and proximal? Temporal is related to time, and proximal is related to distance. Think proximity. So, those are the two things. Easy says, when is the hearings? And 100. The hearings are tomorrow. They start tomorrow, I believe, around 11 o'clock my time. That's when I'm gonna try.
Oh yeah,
and
so
tune
I
in.
said noon. It's
Yeah.
11 o'clock your time. We were both
Right.
saying the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't
Yeah.
disagreeing with you. I don't think I said anything at the time. But
No, I thought you said 11. I was like, I don't remember that being the case. And then because I read somewhere that it was noon,
oh yeah,
and then I
tomorrow.
didn't realize that. Yeah, I'm
Wednesday
Eastern
is
time. You're
11.
Central.
Yeah,
I'm
Wednesday
Eastern.
is 11 Central that it starts up.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have clarified. But yeah, tomorrow I don't know if it's at 11, but I hope so because I don't want to get up earlier. Thomas Vandehoff says, "O temporal ring, O mores, EAP." Okay. KPMH says, "Imagine stabbing a doe over and over until it finally cries, and then holding a trial over it." LMAO. That guy in the purple says, "Hey Nick, thanks for another awesome show. Now do a shot with me to finish off my birthday. All hail King Grifter." Oh. Okay. I don't know if I'm gonna do a half shot here.
Yeah, me too. I'll do it. I'll do the other half for you. Okay.
Sounds good. With our powers combined, we will do a completed shot. I had to move up to my full proof 1792 because I drank the rest of the other one. Cheers, buddy. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, Grifter.
Woo. Yum. Miss Baka says pee pee poo poo. Twilight Dragon 3 says Vic has been invited to a virtual con next month. Check out 8-Bit Shinobi's Twitter, our YouTube channel. And like clockwork, the Harpies are trying to cancel the con. Look, Vic has been invited to, I think, like 5 conventions so far this year that he's already got booked. Vic continues his stretch as being the most booked anime voice actor in 2020 and looking like 2021 as well, which is great. The DCV Titan says, whoever said there's safety in numbers should tell that to the 6 million Jews. Jimmy Carr, an amazing comedian. So that was a quote from him. Mario Carter 13 says, perverted the truth, incited the erection. Track Media Only says, more like the 80s V miniseries. Yeah, that's what you were actually talking about. Maxim Perkunikov says, BUSS Liberty, never forget. And he also says he would have won if he helped Israel topple Assad. Fighting Slug says 2 out of 10 stream, not enough tree law. Angry Baneling says continue this tomorrow. Do the whole doc with Joe. Well, we'll see. I always want to be respectful of my guest's time because I don't have to get up and litigate in the morning. But that's why I said we'll talk in DMs and make sure that tomorrow's a good day for Joe. But I'm welcoming to have him on to talk more. I just want to make sure it's good for him. Cream Pie Cleanup Crew says, can confirm Fauci allegations. We had to work a lot of overtime whenever he showed up for research. That's terrible. All right, guys, that is those are the super chats for today. Joe, do you have any last words before we wrap up for tonight?
No, this was I gotta tell you, I'm a little disappointed how far we made it through this document. I was like so sure we'd make it like further through.
Oh, you naive summer child.
I will be happy to come back, assuming that that works out for you. And I do want to finish this document with you, and I am going to hold you to. I do want to get some tree law from you. That's important. I look forward to the tree law. Okay, I need my tree. I need my tree law. I need it.
Well, if we do this tomorrow, then what we need to do is I need to focus more on blazing through the document and blitzing through some.
If
of
you
these
want
sections.
to take a day off, so you have like more time, because tomorrow, this is what I realized: you're doing impeachment, like starting. You're gonna wake up, and you're gonna be doing impeachment, and then you're gonna be like passing out.
Look,
I need fresh brain, Nick. I don't need like tired,
What's like 8 hours of streaming a day for the next week amongst friends? I mean, no, it'll be good. I'm planning on doing tomorrow, doing the first impeachment show and seeing how that goes, and if it continues to be interesting, continuing. But I am still planning to do the nighttime shows because I have so many people who want specifically the nighttime show because they drive or they work or whatever, and I want to make sure that still happens in either
Okay, but if you
case.
decide that you want to like recap what happened in the whatever and spend some time, whatever it is, we'll talk.
Yeah,
DM. But
we'll figure it out.
I'm totally down with finishing this with you, doing it tomorrow, the next day, whatever. We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
okay?
Absolutely. All right, guys, make sure if you have not, go check out Good Lawgic on YouTube. Subscribe, but more important than subscribing, watch some of the videos.
Yeah, I do
watch
some
the
good
videos.
Work.
Share the videos. Good
share. Retweet.
Good work. Good
hey,
thoughts.
by the way, before you go,
yes.
all you people out there, check out my opening speech and then tell me whether I don't bury Castor or Sean, whoever opens tomorrow. Just check out 10-minute speech. You're gonna learn about the dancing plague, the St. Vitus dance. You're gonna sit there and be like, and then when it all comes together in the end, you're gonna be like, wow, that was just genius. You'll love it. Check it out.
2 more chats came in. F Super Chat sends, the Democrats and rhinos are so cucked that they all get pegged with a 12-inch dildo like Hunter Biden, as well as watching the wives get effed by Drexel. Chat, can we have hashtag rhinos and Democrats at Ghetto Gaggers? Okay.
Rhinos are worse than Democrats.
Ben Frail says, any insights on religious litigation or practice? I don't have any, although your boy Ron Coleman, and his associate Harmeet just had a big victory at SCOTUS. Today? Yeah,
really?
Yeah, they successfully enjoined Gavin Newsom's order treating churches and religious organizations differently than businesses, deeming religious gathering places as non-essential, basically.
But didn't Gorsuch already decide that like a couple months ago?
Yes, in an unrelated case, but the courts there in California just went ahead and ignored that.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So they had
good job, Ron.
Yeah, they had I don't know if he was on that case. He retweeted it. I know Harmeet was.
Well, he wasn't in town for Shabbos, so like it makes sense if he was out of town because I literally go to the same synagogue as him.
Yeah.
So, and I know he wasn't there, so which means, and I think right before Shabbos he tweeted out some picture from like somewhere out of town. So that would make sense if you tell me he was down in Washington or whatever, or California. Yeah. It was 9th District or was Supreme Court?
Supreme Court.
Oh, good job.
Yeah, they did really well. Bad Dragonite says, what kind of tree law impeach trees? Okay, very funny. Angry Baneling says, my body is ready for Species 2, Senpai. I think we're starting with American Psycho tonight. So come over to Twitch, by the way, if you want to watch American Psycho with me. Joe, if you want to hang out for just a second, again, I always like to say
Yep.
goodbye in private to the
Yep.
stream. We'll catch you
Thank you,
guys.
guys.
Yeah, we'll make sure you show up if you want to watch the impeachment stuff. Check out tomorrow around 11 a.m. Central Time. Otherwise, just look for the announcement. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow night. Have a good night. Tavlon Avahu says, one last question. How likely is it for one of the old senators to crap their pants again? Very, very likely. That was Pat Leahy, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Well,
And imagine that happens from like the head seat. That's going to be streaming everywhere.
yeah, that smell would be permeating the entire chamber within minutes. Oh God.
You know what? Even if he manages to keep together, the smell of tomorrow's impeachment is going to be permeating in that room for a long time.
Well said. I'm not following that up. Y'all have a good night. Peace. Peace.